Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Free Bridge Podcast. I'm your host, Brian, and today the topic at hand is going to be about the era of grunge. But before we get to that topic, I just want to make sure that you guys like and subscribe to the channel. I've been getting a lot of support from a lot of people, and I'm really happy to see that. So, whenever you guys can, come on, check out the channel. Always remember to subscribe. We got our new website up, and we have Facebook page is growing. And we're on SoundCloud finally, and we are on Buzzsprout, and we're on iTunes. So that's a lot of good things. A lot of good things are happening with the podcast. It's starting to grow because of you guys. So now, without further ado, let's talk about the era of grunge. I have the Felicos on.
My man, Pots and Pans. What's up?
So
and to the blood again. Same old trip, it was back down. Oh, I made a big mistake. Try to see you once my way.
Beautiful.
I can't go that high.
Beautiful. Love it. Love the enthusiasm.
That's Wood, Alice in Chains.
So, as you can see, the grunge scene and grunge music in general is very important to us. I love the music. Mm-hmm. I grew up listening to grunge as a kid, and I know that you guys have as well. When did it start again? I think it started in the 80s.
Yeah, it was the late 80s. Yep. And the funny thing is, they didn't even like the name grunge.
Well, here's the thing. They liked it at first, but from what because I watched the VH1 special documentary on the grunge, and a lot of the guys were like, dude, at first it was awesome. It was everything, but then they started hating it because they were labeling everything as grunge.
As grunge, yep.
Like, I remember Billy Corgan, is that his name?
Yeah, Smashing
Billy
Pumpkins.
That's not grunge.
No, but he said they lumped them in. They said, oh, Smashing Pumpkins, that's grunge.
He hated it.
Yeah.
They did it, actually. He had an interview, I think it was on actually Joe Rogan podcast, and
he says it everywhere.
He was talking about how they were lumped in, and he hated it at the time because he felt like they transcended grunge, that they were more sophisticated, they weren't trying to be that.
Yep.
And all he did for like an hour was shit on Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam, but it was funny because like he's talking about Eddie Vedder and he's like, oh yeah, that untalented hack, but he's Eddie Vedder, so he's got that going for him. And but it was really, really funny.
I couldn't believe and I kind of feel bad because there was a lot of bands that were like, dude, we're not grunge. Stop saying we're grunge.
But he did talk about how basically Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley, and like Chris Cornell, like they were it. Like they were like rock god trios.
Yeah, man.
Well, no, he said the three voices of the generation were Lane Staley, Kurt Cobain, and Scott Weiland.
Scott Weiland, that's what I meant.
Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots.
Yes.
Which has my two favorite songs. Not even grunge songs, my two favorite songs ever.
So grunge, I'm on Wikipedia right now, and I know everybody says the bad source. I'm going to use it anyways.
It's a beautiful source.
Grunge, sometimes referred to as the Seattle Sound.
Yes.
Sometimes, always, is a subgenre of alternative rock and a subculture that emerged during the mid-1980s in the Pacific Northwest U.S. state of Washington, particularly in Seattle.
Seattle, I didn't get that.
Grunge is like Starbucks.
Yeah. By the early 1990s, its popularity had spread. I mean, it's pretty cool. Like, I remember watching that documentary and some of the things that they say in it, like, they were saying how some of the bands that started, it was just a bunch of small-time bands that were coming together. And most of the time, at the concerts, they were all band members.
Yeah.
In the crowd.
It was the other bands listening to your band.
Yeah. It's awesome. Can you imagine? It's just like we're doing a podcast, a bunch of other people doing podcasts, listening to our podcast. We're like, I can't wait. There's a stupid little fly in here. I'm going to murder it.
I think in most places, specifically Hollywood, sports, and music, you'd rather have the acceptance of your peers than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the Seattle scene back in the grunge era.
In fact,
and the best explanation of grunge would be punk rock attitude with heavy metal.
Oh, that's the thing, is that they really liked punk rock growing up.
Yeah, because it's the attitude. It's a rebellious attitude.
Mm-hmm. And, they were doing their own spin on it, and it's a little different because it's mixing both, and that was never seen before.
Yeah.
So...
Well, it was coming right off the era, even in the beginning of the 80s and late 80s, you had the hair bands.
Yeah.
Like you had Def
Leppard.
The
glam bands.
Twisted Sister.
Yeah, glam bands. You had heavy metal, like bands like Metallica.
Yeah.
You had the glam bands, Twisted Sister, and then you even had like the Bon Jovi. You also had that whole...
They would be hair bands.
Huh? That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Glam / hair bands. So you also had that whole 80s... It wasn't techno.
Yeah.
No, but it wasn't called techno. It was actually, it had its own name. A lot of synthesizing in it.
synthesizing.
Like that was the sound in the 80s. I mean, listen, we were
music.
We were listening to I Ran by Flock of Seagulls on the way here
All
today.
day, baby. All day.
Depeche Mode.
Depeche Mode.
But,
and,
there's a couple of bands that actually
Billy
come
Idol.
to mind that I think
Billy
really
Idol.
inspired grunge. You have like Sonic Youth, the Pixies, the Melvins, Dinosaur Jr., the Replacements.
Well,
they
the
were that
Melvins
late
were
70s,
Actually,
early
Led
80s.
Zeppelin was another big one. From what I saw in the documentary, Kurt Cobain said Led Zeppelin was one of the ones that he inspired him.
Well, I meant meaning like right there they bridged
Yeah.
to grunge. Because
Yeah.
Led
They
Zeppelin, you're
free-bridged
talking
it.
about 60s, 70s.
They free bridged it.
60s, 70s were a lot of their influences. Because that was real rock. It was in a time where you started experimenting with drugs during Vietnam, things of that nature. And then 70s, you still had that as well as disco, which died in the late 70s. And then the 80s was more so about the hair bands.
Yeah.
Actually, it says right here, when grunge first developed, music journalists called it pain rock due to its strong influence from Black Sabbath's negativity.
Yeah,
Well, it's funny.
That's weird. That's interesting.
I think we were talking about this the other day, you and I, Brian, is that I think the biggest difference, because, like, take Alice in Chains. That was the first grunge band I ever, quote unquote, ever heard. It was in my dad's car. I'll never forget. He had the album
Same here.
Facelift, which came out in 1990, and he used to play Man in the Box all the time. And
Great
that
song.
was, like, I always thought that was heavy metal when I was a kid. Because he used to listen to Metallica, Alice in Chains, bands like that, and they were out in that same time. And the sound was very similar, but when you listen to the lyrics, like, I think the difference between heavy metal and grunge, when you have a very similar sound, is that grunge, like you said, it was more, the lyrics were more about pain and internalizing that pain, whereas yet heavy metal was more like anger. And there's a difference between pain and anger, because you could have pain but not take it out on people. And I think that's the difference, between a lot of like the Metallica songs where it's like, die, 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 my darling, killing people, hurting people.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing was in that VH1 special, they talked
watched
about
it?
Alice.
You watched that one too? I love
they
that.
talked
I
about
love that
Alice in
special.
Chains specifically, and how it wasn't necessarily as grunge as the other bands. It was more so heavy metal.
It
just like you
was,
said.
yeah. But that's the thing that they say is that the genre was it almost didn't have like a very specific sound, because you could have guys like Kurt Cobain and Nirvana, and then you could have guys like
Grunge for the most part was definitely a softer sound than heavy metal, and I think what ended up happening with Alice in Chains, what got them to be looked at as a grunge band was their album Jar of Flies. It had that acoustic. I mean, there was still some electric guitar, but it was mostly acoustic sounding. It was softer and it was much more deeper. And I think when people heard that album, they were like, oh, you know what? Yeah, these guys are grunge. Because you really listen to the lyrics. Because in heavy metal, a lot of lyrics get lost into the big guitar riffs and the heavy bass and the crazy drum sets. And I think that album really brought out the grunge in Alice in Chains. And that's pretty much what's going to forever cement them into that grunge scene.
and I remember so I was looking up some stuff, and there was they did because all the bands didn't really have enough songs to make their own.
They'd have a
full-length-
compilation with each other.
Yeah, so they
Everyone
didn't have
had, like,
enough.
one song on an album.
None of them could do a full-length album, so they just decided to do a compilation. And the name of the record label was CZ Records, and it was the first album that they were putting out from the grunge scene. It came out March of 1986, right? And it was a compilation album called the Deep Six. And it's funny seeing the names of the bands. Green River.
I think Melvins were on there. Right?
Melvins is still playing. You know that?
Yeah.
They're still together.
They're still together.
So Melvins was big in that, to amongst themselves.
Yeah.
They were big. Green River.
Was Mother Love Bone on there?
No.
No, Mother
The
Love Bone was the
Love Bone
first
wasn't
band to have their own album.
Green River had bandmates from that are gonna be in Mother Love Bone. So we had Green River, Malfunction, Melvins.
Was Mudhoney on there?
That sounds
No,
right.
Skinyard, Soundgarden, and
Soundgarden, yeah.
and
was on
U-Men.
there. Wow.
Okay.
So Soundgarden is one of the veterans, as well as Melvins, Malfunction, Green River.
Chris Cornell, the lead singer in Soundgarden, is literally, I feel like, in every grunge band.
Yeah.
It was actually one of two earliest albums that CZ Records released. So that's the first one, and then I don't know what the second one, like I guess tanked or something. But those bands were the ones that were like trying to make a name for themselves, and when I read that, I was like, "Oh shit!"
Well, that
Soundgarden was in
that was
there?
before everyone when you could have an EP. So I remember like when we were in high school, you had a lot of like those punk rock bands, the ones that didn't make it. Like obviously, like Sum 41 had a couple of their own albums.
Sum 41.
Take like a band like Halifax.
I actually like
that
that.
had an EP. They only had like 4 songs on it. But I remember before they had that, they were on a very similar thing where it was a bunch of Canadian punk rock bands. They got together for a concert and they all didn't have an album. They all had one song on it. And
Yeah.
that's how a lot of those bands ended up getting an EP, and then some of them were able to get their own LP. So it repeats itself.
So
Wasn't there another label they mentioned, Sub Pop?
Sub Pop was Sub Pop was the one that released the album for Mother Love Bone.
Yeah.
So Mother Love Bone
Was
right?
the first to have their own album, correct?
Yeah, they were the very
Yeah.
first. And here's the thing:
They were saying the smart money was on Mother Love Bone, that they would be the first ones to become nationally recognized.
So Mother Love Bone was established in 1987 by ex-Green River members Jeff Ament, Bruce Fairweather, and Stone Gossard. Ex-Malfunction frontman. So the frontman for
Andrew
Malfunction
Wood.
was
Andrew
Andrew Wood.
Yeah.
And ex-10 Minute Warning and Skin Yard drummer Greg Gilmore. So they initially formed in 1987 out of the cover band Lords of the Wasteland, which featured Wood, Gossard, Ament, and Malfunction drummer Regan Hager. By early 1988, the band had added Fairweather, replaced Haggard with the drummer Greg Gilmore, and changed the name to Mother Love Bone. Right. So they were the first band that everybody was thinking these guys
These guys are going to make
are
it.
going to be
People to
big.
this day still say that if Andrew Wood lived, like they would have been then what we know as Nirvana. Because
Yeah.
let's face it, no matter who your favorite band is in grunge, Nirvana is the face of grunge.
They're the ones who opened the door, and then the rest of them kicked it down.
Yeah.
So I actually want to talk about what happened with Mother Love Bone, because I think that story in itself.
They never were. I mean, that's really the
Well,
story of
They
Mother
had
Love Bone.
one really big single.
But meaning
Chloe
he
Dancing,
d-
right?
Well,
but
they
he
had
died
the
before-
album.
Dancer?
But didn't he
Yeah.
die before the album even hit?
4 months before the album
That's what I'm
came
saying.
out. So they had Sub Pop was going to release their album Apple.
They never
Heroin
peaked, is what
overdose.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
They
they
never
didn't
got to
have a
peak.
chance.
He
They
never
didn't
had
have a
a chance.
chance.
was
Yeah.
only
Exactly.
24 when he died.
Yep.
So he died of a heroin,
Heroin
overdose.
overdose, yeah.
Very
And-
common theme. In
Yeah,
grunge.
and we will be going over that because you're going to see that a lot throughout this podcast.
And on
it's,
YouTube,
it's really
they,
sad that we
they actually have a documentary of him on YouTube. It's about an hour and a half. I would
Yeah.
recommend it.
You know what it was? Because was Andrew Wood
Yeah.
his the way his presence was.
Flamboyant.
He was in your face. He was like long hair, jumping around. Couldn't be
He was
controlled.
like the David Lee Roth of grunge.
Yeah, pretty much. He had that personality that you needed to make your band just not be about the music.
Which
Now
was
it's
very
ascending.
ungrunge-like.
That's
though.
what I was just
Yeah.
about to say. Yeah,
He-
it happens that the bands that made
Yeah.
it, their lead men were very introverted.
Yeah,
part.
that is interesting.
didn't want the,
That's
they
not what
didn't
the
want
grunge
the
like?
stage. They didn't want stardom. They just wanted to be them.
He was like a Freddie Mercury type, where
Yeah.
he just this huge personality. He's bigger than
He
the
was
band
bigger than the
almost.
band, right? He was
Yeah.
bigger than life,
Yeah, and
essentially. And
he was kind of
unfortunately,
sexy
it
too. I'd give him a kiss. I'd hug him. I'd hold his hand. So I want to actually go over this story because this story, when I read it, I was blown away by it. I couldn't believe how it's just interesting how the world works. So Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament were band members of pioneering grunge band Green River. They then joined. We talked about how they joined with
Mother Love Bone.
Yeah, Mother Love Bone. They formed. Now, what happened was he died of an overdose, right?
Right. 4 months before their album gets released.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So Ament and Gossard, right? Ament and Gossard. So Ament is he's the bassist,
He's the bassist.
and Stone Gossard was the guitarist. He's one of the lead guitarists.
I
And
was just about to say.
yeah, so they were devastated by the death of Wood and in the resulting demise of Mother Love Bone, because that's it. The band's done.
Mhm.
So Gossard spent his time afterwards writing material that was harder edged than what they had been doing previously. After a few months, Gossard started practicing with fellow Seattle guitarist Mike McCready, whose band Shadow had broken up. So McCready in turn encouraged Gossard to reconnect with Ament. After practicing for a while, the trio sent out a 5-song demo. In the demo, they sent it out in order to find a singer and a drummer. So they needed a singer and they needed a drummer. They gave that demo to former Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer Jack Irons. The demo, they sent the demo to see if he was interested in joining the band, and he did not want to be a part. So Irons passed. He did not want to be on the band. He passed on the invitation.
He wanted to do his own thing at that time, right?
I think so, yeah. Here's the thing, though. Jack Irons, he had a friend that played basketball with him in San Diego, California, right? He was a singer. Now, this friend was also on his spare time. This is fucking crazy.
Pick up basketball.
Yeah, they played basketball. He was also a part-time.
Gas station
He worked part-time at a gas station. That singer was Eddie Vedder.
Never heard of him.
Unfucking believable. So Eddie Vedder listened to the tape shortly before going surfing, where lyrics came to him. He then recorded the vocals to 3 of the songs, and it is Alive.
Yeah, I was gonna say I knew Alive was one of them.
Well, I'm still alive.
Yes. Once.
That's another great song.
And Footsteps. In what he later described as a mini opera entitled Mama Son. Vedder then sent the tape with his vocals to back the 3 Seattle musicians who were impressed enough to fly Vedder. So they paid for his flight to come out to Seattle for an audition. Within a week, Vedder joined the band.
Oh, did that work out for them?
Yeah, they became Pearl Jam. So there is a happy ending for Mother Love Bone.
Seems like that
They
plane
became
ticket
Pearl
was
fucking Jam.
That plane ticket was a great investment for them.
Well, it's just like anything else in life. Something else's demise is the beginning of something else.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. To know that, like, there could be such crazy shit going on in your life. You have no idea what the plan is. It's just shit is going on, and it's out of your control. And instead of giving up, these guys said, no, we have something here. And they continued on, and they were saying, we can figure this out. And look what happened.
Reminds me of someone else.
Yeah. It reminds me of us, like, with the podcast. Because here's the thing. I was in St. Louis, fucking hating my life. You were in, for a little while, you were in Nashville. And Matt was in Arizona. You've been moving back and forth. And all of a sudden, we're here in New York doing this podcast. I'm not saying we're going to be the next Pearl Jam of podcasters, but I am saying, who knows? Who fucking knows, dude? All we need now is for somebody to just,
it's crazy to think just one person's death changes the whole
landscape of music.
Exactly.
I was talking to Brian about that too.
It's like a silver
Lane
lining.
Staley almost became the lead singer to Rage Against the Machine, and Brian was like, "I don't know if I would listen to Rage Against the Machine because he only knows what he knows, and he knows the lead singer of Rage Against the Machine."
Yep.
And you couldn't imagine Lane Staley's voice singing those lyrics.
No. I like Stone Temple Pilots, though. I love Stone Temple
Well,
Pilots.
No, that was Alice in Chains.
Oh, that's
You're
right.
thinking of Scott Weiland.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh my God, I love Scott Weiland.
But to think that though blows my mind.
But also prior to that, they started Temple of the Dog.
Yeah.
So it was Chris Cornell and
Cornell,
Eddie
yeah.
Vedder, and it was a tribute band for Andrew Wood.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
And Andy Wood was roommates with Chris Cornell. That's how he knew he played music. They were roommates together.
I mean, the way Pearl Jam was created, that's an amazing feat in itself. I do feel bad for Mother Love Bone, and that must have been a huge shock.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Andy Wood.
Well, I feel
his
bad for his family.
Yeah, man. Jesus.
And if you watch the documentary, he wanted to stop doing drugs, but I mean that's just what it does to you.
Heroin's a tough one to kick.
You become a slave to it.
So what's your favorite let's start with favorite band. If you had to pick one from the grunge.
The
Of
grunge.
Grunge, Alice in Chains.
Alice in Chains is your favorite?
No doubt.
Really?
Yeah, because they have the most of my
Why
favorites.
why are they what is it about Alice in Chains that just connected with you?
I think I would say that because they're the most relatable. Like the lyrics from Alice in Chains, obviously the majority of their lyrics are written by Jerry Cantrell, which is their guitarist, who I actually met when I was like 6. Hi, Jerry.
And he does a lot of the harmonies.
Yeah,
So he really is the sound of Alice in Chains too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but Lane co-wrote some of the lyrics. But the funny thing is, the lyrics were written by Jerry, but I feel like when I hear them, it's Lane.
Yeah, it
He's
is about
talking.
Lane.
He wrote those to Lane. Like you listen to Man in the Box, that's Lane Staley's life right there. That's the end.
Down in a hole.
Yeah, everything was lame, and I think every human being's been at a point in their life where they were down, they felt like they may have been out, whether it's a long period of time or a short period of time, even if it's a day or for years, and it's very relatable. Nirvana was probably a close second, but their lyrics are not as relatable because I think, Kurt Cobain's lyrics were almost very non-fictional. Like, he liked to tell stories, but there was, like, almost a little bit of fairy tale to it.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? It didn't feel real, but it was like, wow, this is amazing. Whereas you listen to an Alice in Chains song, and you never feel like this has been me at some point, or someone I know.
Uh-huh.
So, and I think that's what really resonates with me with Alice in Chains.
Alice in Chains? Okay. Matt, what's your favorite band?
Man, this is a tough one. Because Alice in Chains has probably the best catalog of music.
Uh-huh.
But I would have to go Stone Temple Pilots. The reason being is
Ooh.
that my two favorite songs were by them. So Plush
And Creep.
which were both encore, but the acoustic version of Plush is what really turned
I
me
love
onto the
playing
band.
Plush on
Which is the greatest
Plush
hits
on,
album.
on
This is a
Rock
song-
Band.
This is a song called Plush.
When I feel.
Yeah, and that's when MTV was at its peak.
Oh, that's another thing. MTV
Yeah.
was the reason. So, for me, it was because I didn't actually get a chance to listen to Alice in Chains till later. I didn't really because they don't really play Alice in Chains too
Yours
much.
is either Nirvana or Pearl Jam, I bet.
Huh?
It's Pearl Jam or Nirvana for
Nirvana for me.
you. Yeah.
Because what happened was, at my cousin's house, he had a Nirvana CD, and I was like, "Well, why do you have this?" And
What
he
album?
said, Bleach.
Okay.
And I was like, "Oh shit, you have this?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't listen to that shit. You can have it." So it's pretty much what he's like. I don't listen to that
His garbage is your gold.
Exactly. So I went home, I listened to that shit, and I was like,
Was that
loving.
the first time you were exposed to grunge?
That's the first time I was exposed to grunge.
Matt, when was the first time you were exposed to grunge?
with you, with Pearl Jam. Not Pearl Jam,
Alice in
Alice in
Chains?
Chains, yeah,
Yeah.
in Dad's car.
So
I actually listened to Stone Temple Pilots by mistake. I was downloading something on LimeWire at the time, and it wasn't the right song.
Was it when you were trying to get Creep by Radiohead?
LimeWire?
What?
Were you trying to download Creep by Radiohead, I think is what you told me. And you
That
got
was-
Creep
yeah.
from Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah, that was one of them. And then I don't even know how I listened to Plush.
I think because you heard Creep and then you were like, oh.
But when I was about 17, that's the only song I listened to in my car.
I used to get into his Mustang. Like if I had to take his car somewhere because mine was getting blocked.
It was
in
on
the
a
garage,
loop, that thing.
It was my album. He had the greatest hits Stone Temple Pilots just replaying Plush acoustic all the time. It was,
I was
crazy.
obsessed with that song.
Dude,
It just gravitated. I don't even know why. It wasn't necessarily the lyrics.
Because you're not very Plush.
No. But it was just I don't know, something about the way he was singing it. And especially that it was live, acoustic. I gravitated towards it.
honestly, for me, like, when I listened to those songs,
By Nirvana?
yeah, I was like, what the hell?
What's your song of choice?
Jesus,
Ooh.
man.
Put him on the spot.
This is a tough one.
Yeah,
Because Nirvana is so. But the funny thing is, Nevermind was their biggest album.
Well, that's by far their. I mean, I personally like Nevermind album the best. But
Nevermind is obviously their best album.
well,
That's
yeah, but there's a lot of people that don't. There's a lot of
that's
people
what
that like other
really
albums.
was the start of grunge.
Yeah.
Of
Well-
what it became.
Well, to me, like, if you had to take the top 5 grunge albums while Brian thinks about what song he likes the most,
I
know-
think it was probably Love Buzz.
that's your favorite song?
That's my favorite
Okay.
song on Bleach. But
Right,
my
no, I
favorite
know.
song by
Nirvana.
Nirvana,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Your
Smells Like
favorite-
Teen Spirit's got to be that one.
Well, it's funny because that's not my favorite Nirvana
It's
song.
not
Really?
mine either.
Yeah, because
Well, there's a lot of
I
good
think
ones.
It is. That's a really good song, but I'm like one of those guys that I don't like. I kind of feel like that's what everyone would say. Yeah. I
Yeah.
try to go against the grain kind of type thing.
But you got to remember, I was,
you
I
think
guess
you're
I
one
would
of us.
qualify as the mainstream
yeah, you're the grain. I got you.
because I didn't, yeah. But like, here's the thing.
It's a great music video, though.
It is.
Music video.
That's what sold it.
Yeah, the music video was fucking amazing.
Well, I'll
made
tell you
it
what, Man in the
huge.
Box's music video,
Oh my
one of the
gosh.
it's like a horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the top 5 grunge albums, I mean, I'd have to say my favorite of all time is Dirt by Alice in Chains. It's got so many good songs.
That's a great.
You got
album.
Nevermind by Nirvana. Down on the Upside by Soundgarden is a great one. And I'll get to a story about that. 'Cause that's actually
How old were you when you first started listening to them?
Well, Alice in Chains, we heard that in 90 was the album. Dad, I heard it in his 4Runner. He had a red 4Runner. So it was probably 92. So I'm 5 years old. listening to
Wow.
Metallica. And
I think I was like
Alice in
9 or
Chains.
10.
God, I was 3.
yeah, Matt was like a fetus, and
And I was like,
he was-
a man.
Matt was in utero at the time. Get it?
Yeah.
Dude, I was like 10, 9 or 10. I was way
Yeah, you were
behind.
like a man
I'm
with a
such a-
suitcase
yeah.
and
Such a
The
badass
suitcase
3-year-old.
fucking already had kids and
So-
shit.
I was crapping my
So
diapers.
actually, got a really
Alice in Chains.
I've got a good story with Soundgarden. I'll get to in a second. 10 by Pearl Jam is probably
That's a
like
great
never
album.
mind is it going to be the public's prototypical
It's gonna be the
number
number
one
one.
album. Then it would be 10 by Pearl Jam, and then you've got Core by Stone Temple Pilots.
Oh
It's
my
obviously a
God.
great album. But so Soundgarden, one of the first times like that I knew I was listening to grunge, and I knew it was grunge because again I thought Alice in Chains was heavy metal when I was a kid.
Mhm.
Was I remember when Jim Carrey hosted SNL. This was back in 96, 95.
Yeah, I think it was 96.
I think it was 96. Yeah, it was, because that's
I
when
think
that album
you're
came
right.
out. So 96, I'm up at my aunt's house with my brother. We happened to sleep over. She taped it, and we watched it live. And Soundgarden was the band that was on there. And they sang Pretty News. And I was like, wow, I really like this. And that was the first time, after someone was talking about grunge. And I was like, oh, that was a grunge brand. And I'll never forget, I read how Chris Cornell, he was playing a Telecaster on that episode when they sang Pretty News from that album. And he signed it and gave it to Jim Carrey because he was a huge fan of them. And I remember when Chris Cornell died, he took a picture of it and posted it on Twitter. And he was just like beside himself because he remembered that day. And it was one of the first times where I felt like I was living a memory of someone else that's famous, because you hear famous people's stories and you can't ever relate to them because it's like they're famous. I wasn't a part of that. But Saturday Night Live, you're watching it live. I watched it live. Same time Jim Carrey, he was there. I felt like I was there. And when he went back to that moment, I knew exactly where I was. And it was kind of surreal.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, after it happened, after Chris Cornell killed himself after a show in Detroit.
Jesus Christ, man. I can't
So
believe this.
Chris and I, because I obviously listened to Soundgarden and Chris Cornell before that, but it's weird how, especially in America, typically when someone dies, that's when we start to appreciate their work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fucked
And
up. That's the way we are.
And sadly, that's how I was about Chris Cornell, because I went back and even listened to his solo.
Really?
Yeah, even listened to his solo, Temple of the Dog, Soundgarden.
Audio Slave.
Audio Slave is big for me.
Audio Slave is
I listen to
amazing.
the shit out of them.
Yeah.
I love
They're
that
not
band.
grunge.
No,
but
they're not
They
grunge.
came out of grunge.
Yeah.
They came
But his voice, man, you
on
can't.
the
That's
heels. Yeah, he
But
is
the
a
funny
unique
thing
voice.
is,
and
Lane
a great
Staley was
voice.
rumored to be the lead singer of that band.
Yeah.
And it ended up being Chris Cornell. And I think a lot of it had to do with the Rage Against the Machine thing.
Yeah.
Because the rest of obviously, Autosave was from Rage Against the Machine.
And then, right after that rumor, he died. Lane Staley died.
Yeah.
Of a heroin overdose.
Yeah, I was a sophomore in high
But
school.
so it's either I called you or you called me after he died, and Chris was saying, I remember when they played in SNL when Jim Carrey was the host, and I'm like, oh yeah, really? The next morning, I get up and I'm looking at my Twitter, and what do I see? Jim Carrey posting the guitar that Chris Cornell signed on that SNL. I was like, oh my god, I gotta show this, Chris. So I retweeted it to Chris.
Did you guys
Yeah.
buy? Let's buy it.
I had already actually seen it.
Yeah,
But
oh my god,
it was it was just sad, and Matt's 100% right. I think we definitely suffer from that in every aspect of life, is that we really don't appreciate things until
they're gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's no different with stars.
So
I've been really
same
trying
with
to make
childhood.
an effort to try and I think Chris Cornell is probably the most underrated
Lyricist.
of the frontmen of grunge. That's
it's
my
between
opinion.
it's between him.
I think Eddie
obviously.
Vedder's probably the most overrated.
What?
Right?
I love Eddie
Well,
Vedder,
well,
man.
here's
That
the
guy.
thing.
Look, that band when they got together, they made
Musical
pure
fusion?
fucking gold.
Kurt Cobain is
Yeah.
going to be predominantly everyone's pick as the best frontman.
Not my number one.
He's not my number one either, but I would say that's
still
gonna be
appreciate
the general.
him.
He's the general
Yeah.
consensus, but you can't say he's overrated
You
because
know-
they are grunge.
That's the thing. He's the one that started the grunge scene, pretty
the thing
much.
is, I think Eddie Vedder's the most overrated, just like anything else. They're like the Aerosmith / Metallica of grunge, right? Like they have survived. They're still playing. They're gonna go until they're dead. Those guys. They're like Rolling Stone. Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to cart them out to stop.
Yeah,
Pearl
man.
Jam?
Yeah, Pearl Jam.
So I think when you get to that point,
You gotta
it's
give 'em
so
props.
easy. Well, no, but it's easy to become overrated because you're just in the public's eye for so long that eventually it's almost like what Batman said or Harvey Dent.
you
is that
either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself
right. So
become
Kurt Cobain
Pearl Jam.
dies. He's the hero face of grunge. and Eddie Vedder's going to keep going, and he'll become the villain. Like, oh, this overrated hack, he's not going to stop. It's like an actor when they play good movies, and then they get older and they play those crappy roles, and they just, you're like, oh, they sold out, they're taking all this money.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think it's
that's
everyone's
the thing,
career.
though, is that when they were big, they could have sold out, but they didn't. They decided to go, no, we're going to continue to make this type of music that we want.
I think that's what happens, though, is the public looks at it like they sold out, but they're just trying to be. They're just trying to be them.
Exactly.
And trying to adjust.
That's why I give them props for it. I don't think they're overrated. I think that's
I think he's overrated for other reasons. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But
so for me, grunge, this type of music, growing up, I was always like made fun of for being like, oh, you're Nicaraguan, oh, you're Mexican, and people made fun of me for being like whatever, different. And
how do you like Ricky Martin?
Yeah, Ricky Martin. I bet you listen to that, huh? And I'm like, all right, I guess I suck. And then I started listening to grunge, and I really liked Nirvana because I had that, and then I got that first album, and I decided to purchase another album with my money, and we got Nevermind, which, in my opinion, that's my favorite album. I could listen to all the songs over and over and over again. So because that was so like big for me, all of a sudden people started going, "Oh, you like that? You like Nirvana? Oh, you like that? I love all their songs."
You speak English?
Yeah, people started going, "Oh, you're not Mecca?" So people started.
You're just like me.
Yeah, they started looking at me differently, and I was able to connect with people. In fact, then that's how I got into all the other grunge bands, because one of my friends said,
So you went from Ricky Martin to Mark Anthony.
Yeah, so they were like, "Oh, so you like Nirvana? I think you'll like Pearl Jam." And they let me listen to Pearl Jam, and I'm like, dude, Pearl Jam's the fucking best. And then, I don't know if you remember this, but remember in high school, they used to make us watch that North Rockland football.
Alive.
So you hear all Pearl Jam
I can't
songs.
even listen to that song anymore.
You just heard all. Why? Because you remind
we
you.
lost.
I know. But here's the thing.
But it reminds me of that. Was it 93? Was it
93 when it was 93 when they won.
So it was 93.
So that was when they were huge.
So what Brian's talking about, we were playing varsity football in 2005, and the last time that our team won a state championship for football at North Rockland High School was 93. Mm-hmm. And they had all these Pearl Jam songs. The most recognizable one was probably Alive. And so we
they had
lost.
Even Flow and stuff.
We
too.
lost in, was it the semifinals?
We lost in the semifinals.
Yeah, up in Kingston, I remember that.
Son of a
to
bitch.
Monroe Woodbury.
Son of a bitch.
So we lost, and now I
I'll
can't
make a
listen.
call.
Anytime I hear that song, it reminds me of that.
It
Oh,
does.
is that like they had a montage of that winning
So,
team,
yeah.
and that's the song?
It was all the highlights.
Yeah. Oh, every game.
And it was in 93 they won?
Yeah.
So that's funny. It just goes to show you. So that album came out in 90, and they were 3 years later. Like that was, we got to make our montage. With
Yeah.
That's the thing. And that's because when I was listening to Pearl Jam, I was big on that band. I was big on Nirvana. And now I'm on a football team, and I'm not really connecting with anyone. All of a sudden, that's something that connected us all. And I'm like, dude, that's grunge. Grunge for me was something that I was able to like not be who you guys saw. I was able to be like, now I'm Brian. I'm your friends. And I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about the people that I went to high school with. And for me, that's why grunge is very important, because if it wasn't for that, I don't know, maybe I fucking would have been like just a Mexican kid in the back my whole life.
I think to me, what makes it relatable is it's rebellious in a way. Mm-hmm. You're not only miserable, I'm miserable too.
Yeah. They're telling you you're not alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're not alone, even though I'm whatever Kurt Cobain was at the time, 24 years old. I have all this money. Yeah. I still have the same problems you do. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm angry, but I'm miserable.
I know you're angry.
Exactly. I know you're angry.
I'm angry.
We're all angry. But they have these same feelings as you. And I think a lot of kids, especially in their late teens, early 20s, sometimes you're mad and you're upset and you don't know exactly why.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I was like, oh, look, I'm being accepted because I listen to this music. And I listen to the music because they felt the way I'm feeling. Well, but now I don't feel that way because you guys like it.
Civilized anarchy.
Yeah, exactly, I guess that's a good way to put it.
You know
Except,
what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I think heavy metal is more of that, like, oh, let's set things on fire, destroy
whoa,
things.
Dude, that's a little too strong.
I can't get on board with that. But then it's like, all right, well, we're all the same.
Well, they're just being miserable in the corner.
You just don't know it yet.
Yeah. Now, here's another thing. When I met his name was Jimmy. I'm not gonna say whatever his last name is, but I'm hanging out with him, and he's telling me about this band because I just knew that the band existed, and he knew they have another album. And
what band?
Nirvana. And then what was the name of that last album that came out with Black? Was it called? Was that Nevermind? Was it the one with all like the greatest hits?
Their second album.
Yeah, no, they had another album.
By the way, I don't know if you noticed, it's a trend in music history. Is the second album's always the best.
Yeah, it is. Well, it was one after he died.
Yeah, okay.
And he came out with another
what
one.
I was just about to say. Chris, remember the song that's on there that came
You
out
know
for you in high
you're
school?
right.
Oh, well, yeah, you're right. It's their
yeah.
greatest hits. It's a black cover, and that came out in 2002, 2003. I was in high school. I remember picking that up at Best Buy.
I don't remember the name of the album,
And that's one of my
though.
favorite songs, actually, in grunge. It's called You Know You're Right.
Yeah.
And it didn't even technically come out when grunge was popular. It came out when punk rock was popular in the early 2000s, and it kind of made me relive that whole scene and made me have an appreciation for it again. But yeah, that was You Know You're Right. That was technically, yes, the Black Album, Brian, but it was their greatest hits.
Yeah. And so I had that album, and I was like, oh my God, I can't wait for the next album to come out, right? Because I didn't know. You know, back then we didn't have
Kurt
fucking
Cobain died
Google. And then he goes,
1994?
yeah, and then he says,
Brian, he died 10 years ago.
yeah, he's like, dude, he killed himself. I'm like, what? He killed himself? And he was like, yeah,
Allegedly.
dude. You know, like that messed with me. I was like, oh, why would he do that? He's so awesome. And he's like, apparently he didn't think so. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I started learning about like all these other, and then that year was when Alice in Chains.
Yeah, Lane Staley died.
Lane
That was 02.
Heroin
That was the year he killed himself. Later on that year.
Well, he didn't kill himself.
He died of a heart
just
He
attack.
killed himself.
In a way,
So we have a
destruction is.
this is a debate that I want to have right now. I think if you die of a heroin overdose, that's essentially, I mean, you're kind of committing suicide there. He says it in his songs. He says in his songs, I want to die.
Well, I think
In a sense, it's indirectly
and
killing
he's
himself.
trying to do it.
You're indirectly, yeah, but
Well, he's
no,
trying to get a
there's
high.
difference.
He's not trying to kill himself.
Yeah, taking too much to try and kill yourself is a different.
Well,
I think
how we don't know that he had a lot in his system.
Well, no, he just couldn't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But from what I
Yeah, but
read,
he wasn't saying he wanted to die. In the end,
he says it in his songs.
Well, no. He doesn't say he wants to.
he-
He indirectly says, "I know I'm going to die," and I think that's the difference. Is like, especially with heroin, heroin's one of those drugs where I think you get hooked, and unless you get the proper treatment, you can't stop. There's nothing you're going to do to stop it, and you get to a point where you realize, I'm going to die because I can't stop. Because everyone knows the end game with drugs. I mean, eventually
there's differences though. Like if like I smoke a lot of marijuana,
yeah, but I don't.
there's no fear of me dying. But if I decide to upgrade to heroin, I'm flirting. It's like playing Russian roulette. Like if I pick up a gun,
Yeah,
Right,
but what's the difference
I'll-
between that and alcohol?
I'll get.
You
Well,
could
I'll,
kill yourself with
I
alcohol,
agree.
too.
I'll make
I
it
agree.
more simplistic. Does anyone play football to have brain damage later in life? But everyone knows that that's a possibility when they start. Now, I'm saying.
yeah, okay.
All right, but that's
But
the
a
thing.
lot of people are not playing football anymore.
Yeah, but there's still a ton that do.
I know, but there's a lot of people that are like, I don't know if I want my kids playing it anymore.
I know that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that don't want their kids doing heroin
Yeah.
either. So,
Exactly.
but my point is that there's people like I think you dabble in it when most people dabble in things when they're younger. Like I can't imagine if Lane Staley was like 50 years old and started to do.
Well, how old was
heroin,
he again by that time?
34.
He died when he was
34. That's
34.
pretty old.
No, but he was already hooked for like a decade at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But relatively, it's still young.
My point is that you start doing things young. You know, when you're anywhere from 16 to, I mean, even now I see 30, 40-year-olds that are still acting like kids, but you have that sense of like immortality. I'm never going to die. Like, oh, I'll just do drugs and, you know, I'll get older and I'll stop. It's kind of like the same thing we were talking about with jobs. You know, when you're young, you don't really know what you're going to do. You just grow old and you think, I'm just going to fall into place with life. I'll get a job. I'll have a family. I'll have kids. I think a lot of people, listen, I dabbled with things that I shouldn't have dabbled with when I was younger. And I thought to myself, all right, this is what I do. I'm a kid. I experiment. I do stupid things. I get older. I'm going to kick these things.
Okay, well, you know what? Like, it's like if I were to do coke, which I have done coke twice. What's up? And I was like, no, this is stupid. Like, it felt great, and I wish I could do it again, but I'm not going to do it again because I know it could kill me, and I know that if I were to do it, it would be killing myself.
But everyone's different.
But my point is, if you're gonna do a drug like heroin, right? And it's not like everyone around you is cheering you on and saying good job. Everyone around you is telling you don't do this. His loved ones.
Not-
Well, yeah, but
not
but that's
necessarily,
you.
though.
Yeah, in your life you were, but not
So
for
you
nothing.
think people around him were telling him, I can't keep going?
Well, Brian,
not
no, I don't
telling
think it's
him?
everyone saying keep going, but when you're in like the rock or you're in stardom, especially in rock and roll, grunge, heavy metal, that's a very prevalent drug that's used, especially in grunge. So
Yeah, that is
especially
true.
in that.
Yeah.
era.
and during
Yes.
that era.
Well, that's not
But-
but
but
he was
Brian-
doing it all the way up until 2002.
No, but Brian, that's
you're
my
looking
point.
at
is
it
It was
as
too
like
late.
he's
at
a
that point.
34-year-old man. He didn't start at 34.
Right.
I
He
know.
started as a late teen.
He was a
and-
kid when he started doing it.
So there's people that have a tendency to get addicted to things.
Yeah.
One person could do coke one time, they'll never do it again. There's other people where it becomes a crutch in their life, and it became a crutch in his life. Why? I don't know.
He may have
Yeah.
had an addictive personality.
But I think
Which
he
most likely he did. He was a party man.
Yeah.
Like that, when you're young 20s, teens, and you're famous, you have a lot of money, people know you, people want to be around you. They think of you as like, when we're with Lane, it's a good time.
Mhm.
You know, and there's a difference too. Is you ever met a person where you're like, "Hey, take this," and he's like, "No, I can't do it." Why? You'd like it. He's like, "Nah, if I do it, I'm not going to be able to."
Yeah.
Stop." Like they know they have an addictive personality,
Yeah.
and they don't even touch it
Yeah.
because they're scared of the repercussions.
exactly.
Yeah, stop.
there's
You'll
two-
like
there's
it.
two
Yeah,
different
that's why
types
I'm
of
not
So
doing
people.
you know your limits at that
Well,
point. Yeah.
there's people that just know they have an addictive personality. They don't touch anything out of fear of they know if they do, they're going to get hooked.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but then there's the other side of it. There's the people that try it and they have addictive personality and they get hooked. But it's knowing yourself. And if you just think about grunge and the emotions and the pain, a lot of those guys didn't know themselves. They
Yeah.
had pain. They didn't know
They were
who
kids.
they were.
They were kids, yeah.
So if you think about their music and how they felt, it makes sense how these people were easily
But
falling into that trap. of
I'm
getting
sure if you
hooked.
asked him, and he'll tell you like, dude, I'm killing myself with this fucking drug.
Right,
And
because
I
once he
I
was-
want to stop,
Right,
but
once
I'm
he was
killing.
hooked, 100%.
Yeah.
But when I bet you, if you asked him the first time if he did it, if you asked him, "Are you going to die from this, Lane?" Is he
No,
going to say
no.
yes?
But what I'm saying is, I mean, I look at that as a self-inflicted wound
Oh, there's no doubt.
that's going to kill
100%.
you, and
Yes.
in my opinion, that's a form of suicide. Kind of like
Yeah,
if
but suicide by definition is performing one action with the intent of killing yourself. It's an action.
some people do like when he said alcoholism. Some people say, I'm killing myself with alcohol.
Right, but again, I'm just sticking to suicide. Suicide by definition is performing an act to take your life, not acts, and that's the difference. Is when you become
so
a drug
let's-
addict and alcoholic,
Yeah.
it's multiple times. Now, if at the end he wanted to shoot up so many times and he left a letter like, "I'm going to take as much as I can because I
Yeah.
just want it to end," yeah, he killed himself. Or "I'm going to drink myself to death
Yeah.
until I died." That's different.
So
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
think about this. Ready? He's strapping up his arm.
Oh God,
He's
I don't
putting-
even want to hear this because I hate
He's
needles.
putting a lighter over
You
the
brought it
spoon,
up.
right?
Son of a bitch!
He's putting the
I
lighter
can't
over the
do
spoon.
this.
He's got the syringe, and he
No.
puts it in for the last
Don't
time.
even say the name.
But I'm just saying, do you think he went, "This time I'm going to die"? Or do you think he said,
Well,
"I
here's
just
the
want to
thing.
get high again"?
If he was saying every single time, "I hope this is the last time," is that not a form of like trying to
Yeah,
kill
but
yourself?
I
yeah, but
understand your point.
Yeah.
I just don't think he was.
It's not like he was
It's
saying.
not suicide because I don't.
Well, here's
It's
the thing.
hard to know. It's hard
His
to know.
story,
Maybe he
'cause
wanted to
I
kill
read-
himself. Maybe he didn't.
It's
I don't know.
self-destruction,
Yeah.
not suicide. But there's a difference.
See,
yeah.
with him, I'm confused because there's Kurt Cobain. He ended up killing himself, but he got addicted to heroin.
Allegedly.
The reason that he got addicted to heroin
Allegedly.
would be because he had a stomach issue.
Yeah, he hated that pain that he had. And he,
But the
he just wanted to get
crazy
rid of it.
thing is he hated the pain, but he was scared that the pain would go away and that would stop his creative ability. So he was
Whoa.
Yeah,
worried.
he thought he fed off of that.
Jesus,
he fed off of
That's
it.
dark.
And the crazy thing is, he's a part of the 27 Club. 27 Club meaning a musician that
Died at
died at the age of 27.
Yeah.
Jim Morrison, Amy Winehouse, Robert Johnson,
Janis
Joplin, Jimmy.
I mean,
Jimi
go through
Hendrix.
yeah.
And the crazy thing is, just like we were saying before, you don't realize what you
Andrew
have until
Wood, by
it's-
the way.
No, he's 24.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, he was 24.
Oh, wow.
And Lane Stanley was 34. So they're both not a part of the 27 Club.
Damn.
But like we were saying before, you appreciate it once it's gone. Now, if you're part of the 27 Club, you just went into superstar stratosphere of musicians.
yeah.
So that is probably, as soon as he died, it was probably the best thing for Nirvana as the group because it solidified their place in rock and roll history.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the grunge era, I mean, never mind. You're not even saying it's the
And
best.
that goes kind of like with the Heath Ledger thing too.
I mean, it does.
How old was Heath Ledger?
He was 28.
29.
Oh, just missed
Was
it.
No,
he
he-
28?
he was-
28, you're right.
He was
28.
28, but
Jesus.
he wouldn't be a part of the 27 Club because it's specific to
It was
musicians.
2009 when
Oh,
he died.
okay.
He was 28. It was 2009. That's what
I thought it was 2008 is when the
No,
Dark Knight
2008.
came out.
Oh, right. 2008. You know,
Yeah.
I'm getting all screwed
Dark,
up.
yeah.
I'm
Just
getting all
fucking
screwed
us
up.
Don't
up.
say anything anymore. What was I talking about?
You were saying about how
cemented their
it cements their legacy.
So it's
in
the
rock
best
and
thing
roll.
for Nirvana to do.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at Nevermind, it's not even considered the best grunge album. It's considered one of the best albums ever.
Yeah.
So it's sad to say it's like a painter.
Yeah.
Once they die, their work becomes more valuable. It's the same thing with musicians.
Well, here's
it's
the
the
thing.
same thing with actors in Hollywood.
I don't think that. What was his name from Alice in Chains?
Oh, Lane Stanley.
Yeah, Lane Stanley.
Staley.
So he decided to stop in 1996. He said, "I'm done. I'm out," and then he just vanished. Some days they said they didn't even know where he was because he would hang out in his house for so much. He would just do drugs constantly, and sometimes people didn't even know. In fact, when I read the report,
Oh, you're talking about when he quit.
When he quit the
Alice
band.
in
When he,
Chains. I think when he quit drugs, I'm like,
no,
Brian,
when he
never
quit the band. And so they said, like, they didn't know, like, they didn't see him so much that they didn't even find his body until 2 weeks after he died. Because they thought maybe he was just chilling.
He saw a documentary on that that's actually, I remember when he described him, he was so chilling. Why don't you actually tell that story?
Yeah, what the hell? That's crazy.
So the reason that they actually went to go look for him was his business manager realized that money was not taken out of his account for 2 weeks. So the cops went over and his mother went over. And they said that he was so decimated that he weighed 85 pounds. He was 6 foot and he weighed 85 pounds. His
when they showed him in Unplugged.
So his mother comes in.
Oh, God.
So Unplugged was, I think...
It was actually 90... It was 96 is when
it was 96.
That was one of his last performances.
That's when he was 28. We'll talk about that later. But she thought it was a papier-mâché model of him because obviously he was artsy.
He was working on that stuff at that time, right?
Holy
a lot of mannequins and
that's
models.
how
emaciated he was.
Emaciated he was. So imagine you're the mother and you're thinking to yourself, if he didn't become famous, if he didn't have all this money, maybe I'd still have my boy.
My God,
it's chilling. It's chilling and
like you
said, I think it's even worse because he's self-destructed. Maybe he did want to, maybe he didn't want to.
I mean,
but as
when you put it like that, to me, it sounds like that's what he wanted to do. I mean, who lets himself get to that point?
To me, Brian, okay, so think of this, though. Drugs absolutely change your mind.
Yeah.
They change...
It fucks with the chemistry in your brain.
It screws with the chemistry. I don't even think he was thinking that far ahead.
Well, yeah,
he
Brian,
was
that's
thinking,
what I'm saying.
when's the next high I'm
You said you did coke
getting?
a couple times, right? Like, when you did it the first time or second time, were you doing it going, I'm going to become a drug addict at the end of this?
No.
Right.
The first time I did it was just a stupid thing. The second time I did it was also stupid, but there was girls involved, so I didn't want to look like a bitch.
But your intent was anything but becoming a drug addict.
Hell yeah. In fact, the next day, I was like, even though that was fucking awesome, I'm not doing that ever again. I'm never doing it again.
Right. So, but you luckily had the presence of mind in the situation to be able to remove yourself from that. Most people that do that in general don't. And it only gets magnified when you're in rock and roll, the grunge era, and every night there's groupies, your other band members, other bands in general doing that. Yeah. So I get what you're saying, but you're looking at it with the frame of mind, with logic and with reason. Once you get to that point, it's gone.
If
you're not you anymore. You know his song Nutshell at the end. Think about the last lines in that song. I mean, that is his life right there.
But you think about it. You're doing drugs to the point where you weigh 85 pounds at 6 foot.
Yeah, it's over.
I don't even think he could think that far ahead.
No.
He was just thinking, when's the next high? I need another high. I need that feeling again. And then you get addicted to that feeling. It's not even about the drug. It's not even about wanting to kill yourself. It's
what do you
sad
think?
And upsetting.
Because you know what the thing is? Here's what's crazy is that I think based on what we've seen famous people do, constantly you're hearing another person died from a heroin overdose from music industry, even fucking movie stars, right? How is it possible with all that knowledge we have one of the biggest heroin epidemics going on right now in the country? It fucking blows my mind because it's like, dude, look at some of the shit that's happened to these famous people, and it's not like we didn't know. This is a fucking famous thing.
I'll take it a step further. Right? We're talking about heroin obviously because it's grunge, but think about cigarettes. All the knowledge that we have about cigarettes.
Yeah, but cigarettes has gone down.
Yeah, but Brian, just think about it this way: with everything that you know about cigarettes, how could anybody smoke? Like, I could make the argument that, okay, at least with heroin, coke, marijuana, whatever drug, you're going to get a high out of it. Like, I've smoked cigarettes. I never got high off of it. I did it because I wanted to smoke, and then I got addicted because it's like, it's habit forming. But I never got a high out of it.
Well, the nicotine.
How could anyone smoke knowing what it could do to you?
Because you don't think about it.
No, but
That's my point, is you do it. No one ever thinks when they pick up their first cigarette, I'm going to die of lung cancer.
Yeah, you don't think of the
but here's the
consequences of your
difference. The
actions.
difference is now that people are well educated, that shit has gone down. Not a lot of people smoke cigarettes. I mean, there's still people that smoke, but it's not even
Right.
close to the way it was.
But like Chris was saying,
it's
when you
enough
smoke,
to still have an industry and enough for me to still make money.
Well,
with
that's
my
because they
show,
jack
no
up the
stop.
prices on that
Yeah,
shit.
no,
But what
absolutely.
I'm saying about heroin is we're a lot smarter now when it comes to all drugs. But yet heroin has shot up even more.
But that's what I'm trying to say in general. Forget about cigarette. You're looking at
It's like
this
it
for numbers.
increased
But
as
it's
we got
people
more
in
knowledge.
general, it doesn't matter. You could be educated and knowledgeable, and people do things because I think everyone thinks they're immortal at a certain point in their life, is they're never going to die.
Also, cigarettes and heroin are a little different
Well, yeah,
because
cigarettes
you don't turn into like a
but
vegetable.
cigarettes
That's actually why I use that example. Is
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter what we're talking about. There's long-term and possibly short-term consequences of cigarettes because there's people that get cancer after only a year of smoking. There's people that smoke 50 years and never get it. Same thing with heroin. There's people that do heroin for a year. There's people that die the first time they do heroin. There's people that they do heroin their whole life, never die, and they die of something stupid.
Yeah,
They get
die
into
of
a car
A
accident
car
and they
accident. I was
even
just about
die,
to say,
right? Like-
fucking,
So,
or they choke on some shit, or autoerotic asphyxiation.
right, but that's my point, is that no one does things with the intent of dying for the most part. I think that's just humanity in general. I think that we all innately think that we're immortal, and I think everyone hits that point in their life, and it's at a different age, different situations and scenarios that you realize, wow, I'm not immortal. Maybe it's when you have kids. Maybe it's literally on your deathbed where you're like, yeah, I guess I'm not going to live forever. But that's what I believe. I don't know.
But,
I mean,
but as far as
it's
cigarettes,
surging. There's a lot more people doing heroin now than ever before, and to me, I don't understand how that is still a thing. That
well, heroin's a different animal. But talking about cigarettes versus heroin,
uh-huh.
you smoke a cigarette, you could still think clearly, and that's why people can choose not to do it.
Well, with
cigarettes,
yeah.
But
I mean,
we do
if
it
you-
anyway.
But meaning you could smoke a cigarette,
no.
and you still think clearly. It doesn't mess with your brain chemistry. Heroin's a totally different animal. I mean, you're not even in your right mind after you do heroin.
Well, one of the things that I've actually encountered was with the rising prescription drugs. Like I remember we were talking about back in school. We had OxyContin and fucking Percocets and all that shit.
So the Huffington Post posted an article in 2013, and it stated that 7 out of 10 Americans are on at least one prescription pill,
Yeah.
and it's one that they take daily. So that's 70% of the American population. This is as of 2013. Maybe it may be more, maybe it's less. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But 70% of Americans are on at least one prescription pill. That's insane.
Yeah. It's and another thing, I don't take pills ever. I fucking hate taking pills. Ever since I was a kid. My parents would try to give me pills, I'd fucking throw them out. I'm not taking a pill. I go to the doctor and say he has to take this pill. I wouldn't take it. I'm like, I don't swallow pills. I don't do that. That's not what I am ever going to do. Even if it was like medicine, I'd be like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Let this thing kill me. Whatever's in there is going to do what it needs to do. I have faith in my body. My immune
That's the
system's strong.
argument for medical marijuana.
Yeah. So, you know what? Actually, recently, this is a crazy story, by the way. I thought I had cancer when I was in St. Louis. It's another thing I didn't tell you guys. It just
Like legit? Or
legit.
you thought and you just thought
I went to the doctors
and got screened.
and so here's what happened.
Like we have cancer.
So one day
After this, let's do
Glad
some
we're finding out
rankings.
about this.
yeah, well, now
Yeah,
you're finding out
after
on the
this, let's do
podcast.
some rankings on the
So-
grunge music.
So here's the thing. I'm in St. Louis. I wake up one day and my right testicle was in so much pain
Vinjay.
that I could barely walk. And now Trisha's like she's at work, and I'm in the bathroom, and it's like fucking hurts, and it's like
Was it
inflamed.
swollen?
It's swollen, and I grabbed it, and I felt a huge lump
Oh boy.
Oh.
And all I'm thinking is, it's over. I got to kill myself. How am I going to do it now?
They just would have removed your testicle, but
No, I got to kill myself. It's over. So that's how I think. And so I called Trish, my wife, and I'm like I'm on the verge of crying because I'm terrified. And she's like, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, "You remember how I was saying my ball was hurting for quite some time?" She's like, "Yeah." Does it hurt now? It's unbearable. It really hurts, and I just felt a lump. And it's legit. She's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "I'm pretty fucking sure it's a lump, babe. I know my
three balls.
I've had my balls my whole life." And so
I know these things pretty
yeah,
well.
like what do you think? I don't know my testicles? I know my
I've
testicles.
handled
Goddamn
more
it!
so than
I
you'll
talk to
ever
them
know.
every day.
Henry and Harry are not. They're not cooperating with me. So she says, "Do you want me to come home?" I was like, "No, I can do this."
I know I was freaking out. And I
I'll
said I'm going to
just-
kill myself, but I'm fine.
I'm just gonna go jump off a cliff. I gotta go find the free bridge. No, so so I go to urgent care, and when I got to urgent care, I told them what was going on, and immediately the lady's like, "I'm stopping you right there," and the doctor said, "Listen, I'm not even gonna check it because I have to send you to the emergency room, and I don't want you to pay a copay for me to just tell you that. Just go, just get the fuck out of here, and you need to go right now." Now I'm scared shitless because I thought maybe it's something else. But when she said that, she's like, "You got to get the fuck out of here."
Your ball's gonna explode. Go to the hospital.
Yeah. So I go to the hospital.
Henry and Harry are fine.
Here's
but
the thing.
Mariette, she's not good.
So here's the thing. I go to the hospital and I tell them about like, dude, my ball is like hurting. You know what the fucker said? They went,
Pull down your pants.
like they said, move him to the front of the line. Doctor whatever is going to see you. Dr. Kevorkian. He's like, "You're ready to die?" So they take me in the back and you know, it's a Christian hospital, so everybody's really, really nice, and so they're really trying not to like get me all concerned. Even they couldn't hold a straight face, dude. Like the guy, he's like, "I have to feel your testicle," which, by the way, here's the part that pissed me off. "Oh, I hope you don't mind if Lauren can watch here." There's a woman named Lauren, and she was there.
My wife?
And yeah, no. Now this woman, she was there, and she's like, "Oh, hi," and she's like all pretty and shit. And she's watching my balls out. Oh, this guy's grabbing it. This guy was a handsome guy too. So I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" So he's grabbing my
Now,
testicle.
see, Lauren, this is how you grab the
Look,
ball.
look, Lauren. That's how I want you to touch me. But then he's like, grabs it, and he goes, "All right, there's definitely a lump," and he was like his face, fucking.
It was like flush.
He was like, "Oh fuck, dude, we got something."
What's your name, Brian? Yeah, you're dead.
Pretty much, dude. And I was like, now I actually started breaking down. Like I was fucking crying. I thought my life. I was like looking for things to kill myself with in there. And then like he's like, "We got to take him to the X-ray, and they're gonna do a ultrasound on your testicles because we need to get a better look at it." So we do the ultrasound, and
They're like, "Brian, good news, you're
dude,
pregnant."
I'm crying. Like I'm thinking I'm gonna die or whatnot. And so I called my wife and I'm telling her like, "Dude, I don't know. Like the doctor does that." She's like, "Oh my God, I'm on my way over there right now." And I was like, "No, babe, I don't want you to see me.
I wanna die
because
alone.
I don't want you to see me or Harry.
I don't want you to see me crying like this, and also my fucking Gollum looking ball sack." And so the doctor came back in the room and he said that I had epididymitis. That's the word, epididymitis. Epididymitis is when like semen gets stuck in the little tube that's attached to your testicle, and it got
So you
stuck
had blue
there.
ball.
And he pretty much said, "You have a severe case of blue balls. You got to tell your wife to start taking care of some business, God damn it." And so I'm like,
You're
"Well,
going
that's
with
a relief."
Can I get a prescription for that?
And he's like this. He's like, "We have a prescription for you. It's going to be these antibiotics, and you have to take." He gave me like 4 fucking pills that I have to take.
Here's antibiotics, pills, and some condoms.
Yeah, and here's heroin also. You're
Here's
gonna
a
need to
nudie
take
mag.
Yeah, you're gonna need to take some heroin if you want. You can shoot up right in here with me because next to the homeless guys. And so I left the fucking hospital, and I'm reading the the side effects,
yeah.
of the antibiotics, and it's pretty much could
What you
cause
have.
your liver to explode.
Could
Your
cause ball
fucking balls
cancer.
could get cancer for real. Worse than taking heroin. Like just the fucking worst shit you can read. And I'm like, I told my wife, because she knows how I am about pills, and this is the most I've ever actually wanted to take the pills because my balls were killing me, and there was a legit lump. He's like, "That's what that lump is. It's just swollen up, and it's inflamed, and it's got it's just infected.
Inflammation, yeah.
So it's infected." And I'm like,
There's a bunch of Brian's and Brienne's like,
"Yeah."
"Let me out."
So that's the happy ending of the story. But I was like, "Babe,
Well, I
I'm
hope
not
there was
fucking."
another.
I said to her, "I'm not taking these pills." My wife's like,
Yeah.
"Why not? Just take them. You have to take them." And I'm like, "I'm not fucking taking these pills. I refuse to take them." And I didn't take them. And she's like, "But your balls hurt." And I'm like, "I'd rather my balls hurt than get a fucking swollen liver and all this other shit that says I'm not taking it." So I didn't. And within a week, I think about 5 days later,
It went away.
it finally started going away.
Okay.
And I told her, like, dude, you see what I mean? Like, I didn't need to take those fucking pills. These doctors are trying to shove this shit down my throat. Now, granted, I was terrified, and I was willing to take anything. That guy could have said, all right, you got to eat shit. You got to eat your shit for the rest of your life. And I'm like, I guess that's my life. And I would have done it. But I'm looking at these pills, and I'm like, dude,
you wouldn't have done it.
this looks like it's
obviously.
going to do some damage to my body. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. If he said it was like cancer or something, I would have eaten shit. But when he said it's just blue balls, I'm like, oh, okay. My point is, like, they're so quick. Like, the way they said it, you have to take this, and if you feel any pain, just take that. And if you feel like nausea, just take this. The nausea can come from the antibiotic, so this will just combat that. And I'm like, I have to eat 3 fucking pills a day? I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. And I think that, like,
That's a lot of people's problem with Western medicine, though.
Yeah.
They just try to.
They just try to fix the problem.
They
They
try
try
to
to find
mask
the root of the problem.
No, so they try to mask the symptoms as opposed to trying to find what the actual issue is.
I mean, I'm glad they figured out that I have ball cancer. I just had blue balls.
Yeah, really
but then,
bad.
like, for
These
the
are
pain,
the bluest I've ever seen.
yeah, just for the
Brian, your
pain.
ball is almost purple.
In the words of Dave Chappelle, let's sprinkle some crack on it. Get out of here.
So that's my story about my balls. I don't know how we
Yeah.
got onto that. I think we were talking about heroin.
Yeah, we're talking about
Talking
heroin.
about heroin in
somehow.
America.
Heroin, grunge, and Brian's balls.
Brian's balls.
So okay,
Can we? That's gonna be the name of the podcast.
So the
Hey, well, listen, it goes with
So-
the theme. That was really painful to hear.
It was painful.
So I would say the 5 biggest bands, probably Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Stone Temple Pilots, and what's the
Alice in Chains.
Alice
Alice in
in
Chains.
So
He
those
got
are
mad. Look at him. He's
So-
mad at
That's
you.
why
I'm
number
forgetting.
one.
So those are probably the 5 biggest bands again. 4 of the 5 frontmen have died. 2
Yeah.
of them have died from suicide. 2, alleged, I guess, for Kurt Cobain. Kurt Cobain, Chris Cornell died of suicide, and then Lane Staley and Scott Weiland died from overdoses.
Yeah.
So one of the things
And
that I
okay, so the Scott Weiland, he had an interesting past too. He actually got molested by someone in high school.
what
So
the
that's where a lot of the root of his issues came from. Kurt Cobain was stomach pain. Lane Staley, when I think of him, he's more so just he kind of seemed like a party guy.
Yeah.
I don't know much about his personal.
I think he just lost control of his life.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there was anything.
No, there's no backstory.
Yeah, and then Chris Cornell, he just seemed very introverted into himself, and I think he just got to the point where.
Did you watch in the VH1 documentary one of the things that they said about like why they becoming so famous was such a burden at one point?
Yeah.
Because they said when you're in the grunge scene, going through high school, you're treated like shit. Like you're an outcast. You're picked on by the bullies and whatnot.
Yeah.
And all these bullies, you fucking hate them. So you're singing about the pains that you had throughout high school. Now they're fucking famous. And
the
all those
people that beat
bullies,
them up are the ones listening.
they're
to
listening to
their
your music. They're your fans. And you're like, dude, this sucks. I don't want you as my fan. You're pieces of shit. I wish I could be back in Seattle with my friends.
Yeah.
And then another thing they said was how they almost bastardized the grunge scene, where like now everybody's grunge and they're throwing like they're not grunge. So they equally were pissed off that you're including them in grunge, as if and they're pissed off too that you're including them in grunge. And then this was awesome. In that VH1 documentary, they showed even like the fashion scene. They had like fashion models running the catwalk
I was
with their
watching that
their
too.
little
like flannels.
Yeah.
The flannels,
Yeah.
and the flannels
sweaters.
and the flannels
Yeah,
on sale for like
ridiculous.
$90, but dude, you
Yeah.
could just buy them over here for like $5. Like, what the hell are you doing? So
Just
it was
go to the thrift
bastardizing.
shop.
It was crazy. Can you imagine people like dressing like us and going, "This is the way," and I'd be like, "Are they making fun of us?"
Thing
Like,
is, with like the people in the grunge scene, for the most part, they were homebodies. Like Kurt
Yeah.
Cobain, a lot of the times they said he never got out of his PJs. He was just there with Courtney Love, his
That's
wife
me.
at the time,
yeah.
as well as his daughter, and he would just sit home doing heroin all day.
Can we talk about the Kurt Cobain conspiracy that he maybe didn't kill himself?
Oh, it's
So
not a
they did-
conspiracy. I'm fully
So they did a
convinced he
documentary
did not die
soaked in bleach,
Mhm.
by suicide.
and they try to set the conspiracy that possibly Courtney Love had something to do with his suicide, quote unquote.
I'm on to you, Courtney.
Suicide. They have a personal investigator that was actually paid by Courtney Love, and he's able to get some facts that potentially tie her to his death.
Dude, there's like I mean,
they have a lot of facts. It's an interesting perspective.
so there was like a
I'd
The
recommend
biggest thing that
watching it.
gets
I don't
me
know.
is the fact where they brought up that it was nearly impossible for where the gun was placed under him.
well, the
and
gun was
how
on his
long-
chest.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also another thing that
No, I know
happens.
that, but I'm saying it's under him as far as when he would have pulled it.
Yeah.
And he would have had to use his foot, I believe, because it was a shotgun. It's
Well-
like, and your body, the way it fell, and where
Also,
the gun
the
was
way the
placed.
gun was turned.
Right.
So you get something when you die. There's something called the death grip. So it's almost as if you
You
tighten
immediately
up.
go to rigor mortis, like
You constrict. Yes, you constrict. So the way that the gun was placed is not the way that he would have shot himself. And also the shell of the, because it was a shotgun.
Mhm.
The shell was in the opposite place of where it should have been. It's definitely an interesting watch. I don't know, did he kill himself or not? I'm not sure.
So there was a private investigator. His name was Tom Grant.
yeah, and
he
that's
was
the
employed
one from
by Courtney Love.
That's Soaked in Bleach, right?
Yeah.
The documentary.
And so it says here in April 14, 1994, Seattle Post-Intelligencer reported that Cobain was high on heroin when he pulled the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
The paper reported that the toxicology report determined that the level of morphine in Cobain's bloodstream was at 1.52 milligrams per liter, and that there were also evidence of Valium in his bloodstream.
He would have
Right.
been passed out. Is that what they're saying?
That's what- that's
gets me
suspect,
too, because
dude.
how much Valium and morphine and heroin could you have in there and be able to do
To
that?
function.
So Grant argues that Cobain could not have injected himself with such a dose and still have been able to pull the trigger. And then it says Grant does not believe that Cobain was killed by the heroin dose. He suggests that the heroin was used to incapacitate Cobain before the final shotgun blast was administered on the perpetrator.
Well, there's a possibility that maybe those two things, the morphine and the Valium, was mixed
So
in
what-
with a batch of heroin.
He died on April 14th.
That's when the Seattle Post.
Or is that when they
intelligence
found
report-
him, right?
Yeah,
Well, that's when that article was written, I think.
yeah. Grant also cites that circumstantial evidence from the official report. For example, there was a lot of circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
For example, the report claimed that the doors of the greenhouse could not have been locked from the outside, meaning that Cobain would have had to lock them himself. However, Grant claims that when he saw the doors for himself, he found that they could be locked and pulled shut. Which means that's some evidence that doesn't seem right within the
Within
police
the
report.
yeah.
He also questions the lack of fingerprint evidence connecting Cobain to key evidence, including the shotgun. Grant notes that the official report claims that Cobain's fingerprints were also absent from the suicide note, as well as the pen that had been shoved through the note, and yet Cobain was found without gloves on.
Well, that's the thing. So let's just take a little bit of logic here.
Insane,
You're on Valium, heroin, and morphine.
No, that heroin is heroin when it goes into your system, you have a chemical reaction that turns
That becomes.
that turns it into morphine.
Turns it into morphine.
Yeah.
Correct. But Valium.
Valium puts you to sleep.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
There was Valium and heroin in his system as far as toxicology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got those two things in your body.
In fact, it says 1.52 milligrams of morphine.
So that's what I'm getting to. Forget about the fact that you should
Jesus.
even be functional. Let's just say you can function.
Yeah.
Do you think you're
Say
going,
you're an
let me
elephant."
try to evade getting my fingerprints on my suicide note?
Yeah.
Dude, you're writing a suicide note. You don't care. You're thinking I'm not even going to be here to read this. Someone's going to get it. You're not thinking calculate that. You write your note. You do your due diligence. You take your life. How could that be possible? How could his fingerprints not be on that note, Brian?
Yeah, those are a lot
Especially
of
under
interesting
that
pieces of
influence.
evidence.
Like,
Yeah.
how are you thinking that far ahead?
Yeah.
You're not.
Grant believes Courtney may have mixed a large number. No, well, this is all speculation because he just believes
it's all
that he did.
speculation.
But here's the thing: there are people that have come out and said, that there are different tolerances to the drug. Everybody's like experience when doing heroin is going to be different. Like there are some people. Like for me, if I smoke weed, like I'm done. Like I'm out. Don't even talk to me.
There's some people have a high tolerance.
Someone might like. There's people that I've seen out in public working jobs where they're like, "Oh, I'm fucking high off my ass," and I'm like, "You're high right now. How are you able to
And you're
operate
not
this machine?"
scared?
And they're like, "Dude, I'm fine." And they walk around like everything's fine, and I'm like, "Okay, so it is true. So maybe there's people that like maybe he had such a high tolerance
Well,
that
you
I
think
think
about it,
maybe,
if
to
he's
be able
doing
to function
heroin-
is one thing.
yeah."
But to think like not get my fingerprints on my suicide note, I think that's another level.
See,
Yeah,
that's where
that's
I'm
what
like,
I'm trying
that's
to
weird.
think.
That's suspicious.
That's very odd.
And also the fact that on the report it says, you could not lock the door. unless you were inside the house.
Yeah, like
and
why
then he
would,
went and
why
now
would
you're-
Well, it
police
wasn't
have
a
that in a
house.
report? Like,
That sounds like
what's
lazy.
the point of
He
lying
wasn't even
about
in
that?
his house.
Makes no sense.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't
It
in
was.
the house.
It was like the
The
I guess the guest house, their
quote
shed,
unquote.
or whatever it was,
Or well, they called it
in
a
the back
greenhouse
of
in
this
the
Seattle
report.
estate. Yeah.
Now, here's the part that makes me want to stop even speculating into it because, yeah, it sounds crazy, but like it says several of Cobain's friends have accepted that it was a suicide, but were surprised when it happened. Like Mark
that's what they
Lanigan,
were
a
saying.
longtime friend of Cobain, told Rolling Stone, I never knew Cobain to be suicidal. I just knew he was going through a tough time, you know? Even Dave Grohl and Kurt Cobain's like friends and family were also saying we've accepted that, you know, it was a suicide. So, I mean, if they're not looking for anything,
And
Well,
a
can I
lot
be
of-
honest though, with something?
Yeah.
I think with any conspiracy, whether you're talking about this or any sort of conspiracy that you want to even think of, I think that a lot of people come to terms because it's harder to live with the truth. So, and I'll bring an example, and I'm not trying to bring up this debate. I'm not going to give my opinion, but here's a very popular conspiracy. So take 9/11.
Alien.
for an
Oh, I
example.
thought you were
we'll
going
take
aliens.
9/11. We'll take 9/11 because that one's a little bit easier to digest.
inside job?
Right? So that it was an inside job. I'm not going to give my opinion. It doesn't really matter. So, but let's pretend for a second
Your opinion
that
matters
it
to
was.
me.
No, but let's pretend it was an inside job.
Okay.
It's easier for the public to believe that there's no way that that's even possible because just think about for a second that you could think that your government would do that to you.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be able to function a day if you really, 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 really believed it and lived that.
Yeah.
That was the truth. You wouldn't be able to go even buy a cup of coffee because just think about how do you function? How do you go to work? How do you raise a family? How do you do anything knowing that who you entrust your life with to make your laws, who looks over you and watches, is capable of doing that?
Yep.
And so now I bring that back to the suicide. You know, to come to terms that someone could have killed him, like just think about how gut-wrenching that would be. It's easier to just to come to terms, and I know that sounds weird because suicide's so morbid and it's so sad, but to think that someone killed him, that's a different realm. Because there's that sense of
Gives you
evil.
resent, hate.
There's that sense of like evil that you can't control with murder, that suicide almost makes it easier because it's out of your control.
You couldn't stop it. That's
Right.
what
Right.
what it really is.
I've actually, you know, it's funny because I have a friend. I'm not gonna say his name, but he likes to like just to play devil's advocate for a second. He like when I told him, you know,
Is his name Chris Felico?
No. So I was like, so if like America was an inside job, all that stuff, right? All those conspiracy theories. The way he said it is, it's human beings rationalizing it in their own unique way, where they have to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. So why did 9/11 happen, or why would this person kill himself? So they almost because they can't accept the fact that life can be random, that just random acts occur always all around us. And so we have to almost piece together a puzzle in our head to make it seem like it makes sense if we look at it this way, to make sense of things.
Yeah.
And that's another like coping mechanism that people may have. And when I heard that, I was like, holy shit, that's a fucking pretty nuanced answer. I like that. So it's just to play devil's advocate. Yeah, listen, this conspiracy theories, they don't just stem out of like fucking thin air. There's usually something, like a piece of evidence that makes you
listen,
question.
To make a theory, there has to be some sense
Yeah.
of validity. Otherwise, no
Exactly.
one would listen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the moral of the story is Cobain was killed by a bad guy. We all know it now.
But
Yeah, I
as
don't
far
necessarily know if it was Courtney Love.
yeah, but
Yeah.
as far as
Per
someone
se.
committing suicide and not saying anything,
I
that's
based
not
it.
really out of the ordinary. There's a lot of people that you don't even know that they're struggling and they're going through
Yeah,
big
not for
depression and
nothing.
want to kill
If
themselves.
you had someone that was suicidal screaming, "I'm suicidal," chances are you probably might do something about it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
how
yeah.
many times you hear,
You-
"Oh, he
you-
was suicidal"? Yeah, I know. You used to talk about it like every day, and we just didn't do anything about it.
Well,
Like,
usually the
it's not
person
the
that says, I think I'm going to kill myself is looking for attention as opposed to someone who's really struggling
Really
with
struggling never
depression.
mentions it.
They don't
You would
mention
never
it.
know.
So
I think
you
I
go,
said it
"Oh,
in the
man,
car
I
where I
never
was
know."
like,
I
said
never knew that he was struggling.
I said it to you early in the car when I was like, oh,
Yeah.
imagine if like somebody just went and shot themselves in the head and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that's probably the only time where you're like, all right, they're not looking for it. They really were trying to
they're
end it.
really trying to end it, and they just happen to. I guess it depends on the way you look at it. It's either misfortunate or fortunate.
Yeah. Well, now, and you said it was illegal to even attempt to kill yourself.
Well, technically, it is illegal to commit suicide.
So like if you shot yourself and it failed and you survived, do you go to jail?
I don't know.
I guess it would
I'm
depend
not
on what state.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
If you're in
how
Texas
that
and you try to
works,
do
but
that.
meaning if someone kills himself and you couldn't be an accomplice to a suicide. Like let's say someone said, I want to kill myself. You give them a gun, you could be accomplice.
Oh.
And be charged on that basis.
Well, now,
Which is crazy. I don't
even if like, what if you obtain the gun without their knowledge? But it's their gun. It's their property.
meaning it's registered to somebody
Like
else.
yeah, like say you had a registered gun and like I was like, hey, where's your room? Hey, where's that gun you keep? Oh, it's don't touch it. It's upstairs. It's up on the thing. Oh, cool. And I go up there and then you hear a gunshot. Like what happens next?
I mean, I guess it would depend.
You better better get the Lincoln lawyer.
You better have a good alibi.
Oh my god! So I'm gonna look this up. Attempted suicide like crime? Suicide legislation?
That
Suicide
probably
is a
would
crime
be-
in some parts of the world. However,
Yeah.
while suicide has been decriminalized in some Western countries, the act is still stigmatized and discouraged, obviously. So
by some
that
people.
doesn't
it
really tell
is.
us much.
And like I was saying, we were talking about in the car, like the philosophical arguments for and against suicide. Some people think that suicide is really the ultimate freedom because you're deciding whether you want to
Yeah, that
live
was a
or
great
die.
point. Because
Yeah,
they can't take
so-
that away from you. They can't take that and say that's
Exactly.
your decision.
As a human, we have free will.
Mhm.
So people say. I mean, I don't want to get into the religious aspect.
Yeah, no,
but
no.
Meaning the ultimate freedom is deciding whether I want to kill myself or not. If I want to live or cease existing.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate freedom. To be able to choose that. So that's the philosophical argument for the ability to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
The against, obviously, like you said, it's a disparage act. Some people think it's... I don't know exactly how to put it, but it is disparaged, and they think that you're taking away the ability for civilization to live for some reason. I don't know why. I don't understand that argument at all. I'd have to look into it more, but
What did I miss?
meaning committing suicide.
Like we were saying how it is it's
Meaning-
ultimately your
yeah,
choice.
The meaning it's a philosophical argument that the ultimate freedom and free will is to be able to commit suicide. Because at that point, you're making a decision consciously whether you want to live or you want to cease existing.
Right. So, but what's your argument, or what were you?
Well,
No, there's no argument.
that's for suicide. There was one against suicide, philosophically speaking. I didn't want to get into the religious aspect of it.
I think everybody just says like, you may think that things are tough, and
Well, it's like that
It's
R.E.M.
never- it's-
song.
the world is
Everybody
bigger than you
hurts.
think. Like for instance, when I was saying I'm in a bubble, right? The world is bigger than my fucking bubble.
Yeah.
There's like, if I wanted to go, like I have friends right now that are across the world. There's people that I know in Germany and they're saying it's amazing over there. And if I ever feel down, just come live with them.
Well, I could think of a philosophical argument against it, meaning when you kill yourself, it's not only hurting yourself.
You're hurting
but
everybody else. It's a
if you have
selfish act.
Let's say you have a family.
Yeah.
Let's say you have children.
Yeah.
Because, if you have kids, essentially you're signing an agreement that you're going to be able to take care of these people.
Yep.
So then if you kill yourself,
You check me out. You've
It-
broken that. agreement.
you've broken that promise.
It's kind of where I was. That's one of the arguments I had about doing heroin, because I'm like, if you're doing heroin or drugs in general, bad drugs, as opposed to the good ones like marijuana. But if you're doing like really bad drugs,
Meaning
like you're
hard
hurting,
drugs.
yeah, like hard drugs. The drugs that the thug life drugs. If you're doing those, you're hurting everybody around you. Like it's not like your fucking family is like not feeling it with you. They're feeling it, dude. They hurt with you. They don't want to see you do that shit to yourself. You just said it right there before when you were talking about Stanley's mother
His
seeing.
mother,
yeah.
But
Well, I don't
it's
think
almost
anyone
like
would argue that doing drugs is selfish. But again, it's all the mindset of where you're at when you do it, what your situation is. Because again, it's
because on drugs, do you have the ability to think that clearly? Where I'm hurting people.
No, you're too
I mean,
far
I'm
gone.
sure.
And
I'm
it's
sure.
not-
Like
could be-
in the
especially
beginning,
if-
you will.
Is even let's say
you could know that you are, but it's too
absolutely,
late.
and it's just so addictive. I mean,
love
I've seen people destroyed by drugs,
Mm.
and I don't think they intentionally were trying to hurt people close to them, but that's the result. A lot of the times, especially if you have a family, you have a spouse, whether it's a wife or a husband, and children. I mean, you doing drugs is going to affect their lives, whether you want it to or not. And even if you're aware of that, sometimes the the addiction is so powerful that you can't help. It's almost as if you don't have free will. You don't have a choice. You need that next fix.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'll share firsthand. So, So, I dabbled with some things earlier in my life for a 3 to 4 year stint.
Oh, yeah, me too. I did shrooms too. Forgot.
No,
about
I
that.
mean like where I was actually addicted
to
a specific drug for.
And I wasn't even talking about you.
No,
necessarily.
I know you weren't, but.
I just read between the lines. That was beautiful. I see what just happened.
Well, no, I mean the thing is, I hear you guys kind of talking, and I
don't have experience.
I don't
with
know
hard
my
drugs.
brother to. I mean,
I don't have hard.
Yeah, not like that. And Brian, like you said, you did it a couple of times.
I did
stuff.
coke twice. I don't give a shit. Who knows? I did it. Unless you're a cop, I didn't do it. This is not admissible.
So from when I was 17 till about 21, I was addicted to some hardcore drugs, and I got to the point where I was either going to be living on the street type of ordeal, or I was going to need to clean up my act, and I cleaned up my act. But like when I started, never in my wildest dreams did I even think I'm going to get to a point where this is going to destroy my life. I'm going to die. And I mean, let's face it. I mean, I grew up in a situation where I had close family members that I watched destroy their lives with drugs.
Yeah.
That impacted me as a child. So here's someone who grew up in a household where he was subjected to knowing people that were close to him that were on drugs, and it ruined their life and impacted them as children. And then I grew up and kind of did the same thing. So and again, when I was doing it, I thought I never thought I was going to die or I was going to get to a point where it was going to take over. I was immortal. I was a kid. I'm 17 years old. I'm in the prime of my life. I'm going to have fun.
You're invincible.
I'm invincible. I'm not going to die. And it does take over. And I mean, you do things that you would never imagine. I mean, the things that go through your mind, I mean, I don't even really want to repeat them on here.
When I did the coke, I did some dumb shit too. Like the girl was like, "Can I do coke off your penis?" And I was like, "What?" Yes. And she's like, "You can do it off my butt." And I'm like, "Absolutely. Why aren't we doing that now? We should be doing that always." But I was doing it for dumb reasons too,
right.
like because it takes over.
Right. Well, those are things that, like, when you think about logically, like what could happen as a repercussion of those two.
Like
actions.
I'll do it off your butt.
Like, oh, that's not worth it.
Wait, isn't that what everybody does?
But you're in the moment.
Yeah.
It makes you think differently.
It really is weird the way you just fucking jump into it.
Yeah, but how destructive it was for you.
Well, I was gonna say, Matt, you were on the other side of it. So
I was on the
know.
absolute other side. Yeah.
So
pretty much, you either learn from other people's mistakes or you need to learn it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to learn from other people's mistakes. And I said to myself, I'm never going to touch a hard drug like that. And I still haven't.
Yeah.
And I would never, just for the fear of being addicted to it. Because I've seen it, it controls your life. I mean, based on my experience, I never did drugs, but I've seen it have such a grab on someone where sincerely...
You don't have to say someone at this point. You could just say me. I mean, I'm
well,
right
no, it's not only you.
Yeah.
And I know, but you could speak to it at this point because, I mean, we...
Yeah, and I mean, how damaging it was to you and how much it affected me just having my brother do something like that. It would be magnified if you had a wife and you had kids at that time.
Yeah.
Luckily, you were able to get away from that grip, and you haven't done it since. But, I mean, I've seen it. I'm not even talking about just my brother here, but I've seen it control someone's life where it's almost as if they're not making those choices.
No,
and you look in their eyes and you say, that's not them. That's somebody else there.
Actually, I had a friend growing up who we were like fucking... We were tight. Yeah, we were fucking tight.
2 peas in a pod.
2 peas in a pod. And, when he started fucking, like, I was telling him, like, yo, you're hanging out with this one guy a little too much. And I know this guy sells a lot of fucking drugs. If you're only doing the marijuana, I want in. But if you're doing something else, I think we need to talk. And he's like, well, let me tell you something, Brian.
I don't discriminate on drugs. I do them all.
You're racist against other drugs. And I was like, yo, dude, no, really, seriously, like, for real? You really need to stop, because he was fat, and then he just got really skinny, like skinnier than me, and I was kind of getting pissed. I'm like, yo, I'm the skinny one. you know. And it was
I'm
being
the
self-
one in this
I'm the
tent.
one who's gonna be skinny, but
You're the big pot. I'm the little pot.
You're
Everybody
listen,
knows
fat
that.
boy, all right? Even though he was skinnier than me, I still
Yeah.
called him fat boy. And I was like,
We need to get you some big masks. Pronto. Tonto.
it got to a point though where he robbed me, right? So like this is the climax. So
Yeah.
we're hanging out. It was me and him and that fucking guy. And all of a sudden, the one guy's like, "All right, give me your money," because I had about $200 of my money and I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I saved it. You know, when a fucking kid has money, like $200, that's
It's
you know how much of an
everything.
allowance that is? It's like 3 years of an allowance for me.
That's
You
like
know?
a real savings account.
I was savings the
I could
shit.
make some
I was like,
great
listen, I'm
candy
gonna be
decisions.
somebody. This is gonna go on. I'm gonna fucking put this in
I'm
some
gonna go to
stocks.
college.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
make this $200 work for me.
I'm buying stock with Blockbuster. It's gonna be big.
You ever heard of Yale?
So
Yeah.
before, because I feel like I know where this is going. Prior to him doing drugs, was he a thief?
No,
So you would trust him?
I
Did you
trusted
get-
him. I trusted him with my life.
So as soon as he was doing drugs, he started.
I was
stealing.
worried. And I didn't think that though. I was worried he was gonna get beat up because he was hanging out with kids,
So did he-
men that I was like, dude, these guys are gonna kill us.
Let's fast forward to the end of the story. Did he end up stealing from you?
So what happened was the one guy we met him at a fucking park, and the guy says to me,
Mm-hmm.
"All right, give me the money that you have in your pocket."
Trucks.
Yeah, it was Trucks. Let's just call him Trucks. That guy's name.
Yeah.
And I say to him, "I don't have any money in my pocket. What the hell are you talking about?" And he goes, "Oh, yeah, you don't have $230 in your pocket?" He knew it to a fucking dime. And I'm like,
How do you know?
and I look at my friend, and he's looking at me like he just kind of turned his back. And that's when I knew I walked into an
He
ambush.
tipped him off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he fucking walked me right into the trap. And guess what? I said, "You're going to have to fucking kick my ass. You want this money?" And they beat the shit out of me. And then I went home.
Wait, did your friend help him?
No, he was just,
But-
he was kind of like keeping a lookout, like nobody's coming.
No,
I
don't
could
hurt
hear
him
him.
quick. There's
But
cops
he's like,
coming.
But
there's
that's
somebody
my-
coming, hurry.
That's my point.
Yeah.
That drugs can change.
Doesn't
who you
matter,
are.
yeah. Doesn't matter who you
'Cause
were
you're-
to them.
You're not you anymore.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You something else.
I felt
this
like-
this is controlling you.
I felt like we made eye contact at one point. I was like, "Please," and he's like, "I don't know you."
To get back
No,
on
he's
the
like,
grunge.
bite the curb.
get back on the grunge scene. Let's go through.
Yeah, it's a fact of grunge.
So like we were talking about before, the big five bands, their
Mhm.
front men. If you had to rank them, who would be first? Who would be fifth? You could start from the bottom if you want. Make it more suspenseful.
Top 5 bands.
Top
huh?
5.
So meaning the big five bands.
You're talking about frontmen now at this point?
Yeah, frontmen.
Oh,
so
frontmen.
Yeah,
So
so
you
the
want me to
frontmen are
start
the
back
top.
from 5?
Yeah, so I would say the big five bands are.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll name the most important to me. It may be a little bit more than 5.
Mhm.
Starting
Okay.
backwards.
Okay, go.
So I would go with, you've got Mark Lanigan, which was the lead singer of Screaming Trees,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who ended up actually being a pioneer of Queens of the Stone Age down the road. Then you have Andrew Wood, which was Mother Love Bone. Obviously, his career was cut extremely short. Then I have Eddie Vedder, because I think he's the most overrated. Even though I can...
Strongly disagree.
Even though I impersonate him the best, I think he's the most overrated. Then you
10
have
is a
Scott
good album.
Wieland, who was a part of Stone Temple Pilots and Mad Season. I think he's definitely probably
Wait, no, he was in Mad Season. Wasn't it Lane Staley and
Are we doing top
Chris
5 or are we
Cornell?
doing
What did I say?
top
you
10?
said Scott Whelan? I thought it was Lane Staley and.
I said Mad Season. I thought I said Stone Temple
Oh
Pilots.
no! Wait,
No, he was in Mad
Red,
Season, wasn't he?
No, I thought he was Red Velvet Revolver. Was Scott Whelan?
I think you're going to like
I
this
think
list.
Mad Season was Chris Cornell and Lane Staley. Can someone look that up? Brian,
You
can
might
look
be
that up
right,
for me?
actually.
Wait, what were we looking up?
Nonetheless,
It's,
he was in Stone Temple
The
Pilots.
band Mad Season. Look it up. I think it's Lane Staley and Chris Cornell.
So you have Scott Whelan. Then I would say Kurt Cobain. So he would be now my number 3.
Mhm.
Kurt Cobain.
Okay.
Who, by the way, I think is a very underrated guitarist. People forget he had some good guitar playing abilities.
Yeah.
Lane Staley.
They look at him at
It was
his,
Lane Staley.
Lane
and who
Staley.
else? Was there someone else?
Barrett Martin, Lane Staley, John Baker, Saunders, and Mike McCready. So it was just,
Yeah,
yeah,
I screwed that one up.
yeah.
I thought Chris Cornell.
Chris
did something
Cornell
with
would be
them.
my number 2. I actually think he's probably the most underrated frontman.
Mhm.
Like, I think Scott Whelan is the most forgettable.
Well, are you at top10s.com?
No, I'm giving you my opinion.
Oh shit, you're okay. I'm gonna tell you the top top 5.
So I think
Can you do that
Andrew
after
Wood
mine?
is the guy who never had the career. He cut his own career short. I think
Yeah.
Scott Whelan is easily the most forgettable. Then I would say Chris Cornell is the most underrated because I think there's a difference between those. He also had the most well-rounded voice, and he had the best. He was the best lyricist.
I think that Chris Cornell has one of the best voices of all time.
That's what I'm saying.
No, I mean not just in the grunge.
No,
I mean of all time.
I agree. That's why he's most well-rounded.
Yeah.
I don't think he's
And I
one
think
of the best voices. It's definitely one of the most
Dude, when I heard his voice, I was like, all right, I'd make out
I
with
think
him.
he was
a good voice,
I think
but
he was
it
the
was
best
very
lyricist
unique.
out of everyone too. I think Cobain. Everyone gets.
He does have a lot of good lyrics. I like his songs a
Yeah.
lot, man.
Oh yeah, he's a
But
great
number
lyricist.
one
He's got a
for
nice
me
butt too.
is
a
Lane
good-looking
Staley. You
guy.
know what?
Well,
I
was.
messed this up. Lane Staley, I have here. He was in Mad Season. I think I copy and pasted Mad Season. I put it next to Scott Weiland by accident.
Mhm.
But I do have it here for
Piece of
Lane
crap.
Staley. But Lane Staley is my favorite. Again, I think I just very relatable to a lot of things with Lane Staley. His lyrics that he co-wrote with Jerry Cantrell.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Just the pain that I saw in him. It's funny, like Lane Staley, you looked at him and you saw pain, whereas Chris Cornell, like you looked at him, you just thought he was quiet, but when you heard Chris Cornell sing, it's like I felt his pain
Yeah.
in his, like I felt it reverberating in my body when he sang. Whereas Lane Staley, you looked at him and you're just like, wow, I feel sad.
Well, like Brian was saying during the Unplugged, I mean, he was in sunglasses. He could barely sit on the seat.
On the
and he
stool.
still killed it.
Dude, he looked like
He was
fucking zombie.
He wasn't there.
He looked like a skeleton
Well, it's
that
like-
we just
it's
dressed up to look
Scott
like a
Weiland
human.
when you were telling me when he was on
Yeah.
Howard Stern.
So
Yeah.
it was
He was
about
like
his book.
shitting himself.
It was about it was about his book.
No, I'm serious.
He looked so paranoid. He was out of it so badly.
I thought I pictured him actually like shitting his pants.
No,
on stage.
like,
like
I'm-
he's just like, oh yeah.
I'm serious. Like he
Yeah.
may have actually shit himself.
No, he was.
That's not funny. I'm sorry,
He
but
was
that is
so
funny.
high. It was. It's
All
Like
right,
he
so
couldn't control his breathing.
all right,
especially
Mateo.
because he got raped.
Yeah.
He got molested.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
that's
terrible.
Jesus.
That's something I don't think you could come back from. For most people, if
Yeah.
you can, you're a stronger person than I am.
So-
What's
So hold on. So then, if I'm going top 5, then it's Lane Staley number 1, Chris Cornell 2, Kurt Cobain 3, Scott Weiland 4, Eddie Vedder just breaks the top 5 with honorable mentions to Andrew Wood and Mark Lanigan.
no? Oh yeah, Andrew Wood. There you go. I was about to say no.
So for Andrew Wood,
His
I
career's so
don't-
short. You
I-
can't.
yeah,
have
I
him in
can't
top
put
five.
him-
But
I'm
he's
not
the
gonna put
one
him-
that he propelled like that fucking. Like he's the
I
one
get
that
it,
made
but-
them all believe this is a thing. Without him,
he made it seem like, oh my gosh, it's attainable.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do this
that's
for
my
a
point.
living.
So he's really inspirational.
He's influential, but at
Yeah, but it's kind of like if you
24
were talking about the Bible. He's like an apostle talking
I was gonna
about
say-
it, and then someone else
So,
is Jesus.
okay,
He's
so
inspirational to the
I
guys
wanna-
you
I
said are
wanna
the
hear-
top 5.
I want to hear
I
the
agree.
rankings. I want to hear the rankings.
Okay, so on top10.com, it has as number 5, Scott Weiland. And this
He's
is according,
higher than
this is according to
5,
people's
to me.
voting. This is people
I
voting
had him
on
at 4.
To me, he debatably my number
Yeah.
2,
He's,
and the reason is he has a amazing voice.
his face kind of
in
looks
my
like
opinion,
he kind of looks like the T1000
All
in
right,
this picture.
so that's 5.
he looks
What's
a
number
little bit
4,
like
Brian?
that guy.
Who do you think?
So you just said 5 with Scott Weiland.
Well, you
Scott
probably
Weiland was
said
number
Andrew
5.
Wood. Is Andrew Wood number 4?
Andrew
No,
Wood is
I'm gonna
number
say-
no.
I'm
He's
going to say
number-
it's
he's
going to
number
be
10 on
Lane
this list.
Staley.
Okay.
Lane Staley?
No.
Oh, who?
Chris Cornell.
Nope. Eddie Vedder.
Oh, good.
Number
So
4.
someone agrees with me.
Yeah, they agree with
Overrated.
you.
Got it.
I mean, he's still in the top 4. That's pretty goddamn
Okay, so
good.
Cobain's gonna be number 1.
Kurt
Yeah,
Cobain's
he's a-
number 3.
Number
Oh, I
3.
like this.
Yes.
This is
This is
crazy.
voting.
Lane
People voted
Staley
the shit
number
out of-
2, and then Chris Cornell number 1.
Chris Cornell number 2.
Lane Staley
Lane
number 1?
Staley's
I am the man.
Yeah, no, I agree. As far as just vocals are
or
concerned,
Lane Staley. He's
Lane
he's number
Staley
1.
has the best voice of the 5 guys.
He fucking
There's
Yeah,
no
no.
doubt. He's just powerful and it's
Well,
effortless.
for grunge, he is the best voice. I think Chris Cornell is the most well-rounded voice. Like I feel like I could put him in a bunch
Anything,
of different
yeah.
genres,
And he would just kill
and
it.
he'll nail it.
Plus, he's so dreamy. This guy's even his picture's dreamy.
No, I mean,
But
he was a
Lane
good-looking
Staley,
guy. There's
his
no doubt
voice,
about
you
that.
just
Yeah, I'd
like.
give it to him.
I feel like here's the difference between Lane Staley and the other guys. You hear the other guys sing, I feel like you're cranking it up to hear them sing. When Lane Staley sings, it's like you don't even have to touch the dial.
He is this
He's
guy.
at 11
Yeah.
when everyone else is at 5, and you got to crank it to 10.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, like we were saying, as far as Chris Cornell is concerned, he's attached the lyrics more so than Lane Staley was. So
Yeah.
he's singing what he wrote. Lane Staley is not always singing exactly what
Right,
he wrote.
he doesn't have that emotional attachment to the lyrics. He's just
So you can sense that, like you were saying, you could sense that misery,
Yeah.
You just heard it, and
Did
it's just like, oh God, I feel him.
Yeah.
Well,
This guy's laying his heart out on the line. But Scott Weiland, to me, he's debatably second with Chris Cornell. Just because, man, his voice. I remember I watched this video of him. First off, he killed Unplugged too. So they all really did Unplugged. Besides Soundgarden, I don't remember.
I'll give you a great example. I don't mean to interrupt you, but a good analogy. The difference between Lane Staley and
Chris Cornell.
Hearing Chris Cornell sing is almost like let's say someone died tragically. Hearing the mother speak about her son died tragically, and she's crying, and you just see the emotion, and you just feel it when she speaks about him. That's Chris Cornell.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas then you have an outsider give a eulogy that's so powerful that touches you, but isn't obviously related to that person. That's Lane Staley. It's like, wow, that really hit me.
yeah, he's good. They're a fucking awesome band. All these guys are powerhouses. I don't really want to take anything away from either one of them. They all have their. Eddie Vedder is awesome. Look at his picture, streamy too.
I think Eddie Vedder's.
He's got beautiful hair.
But to me,
he's good.
He's the fifth out of them for me.
But there's a lot of people that rank him second, and it's always like when I took people, it's like Cobain, Vedder, and I feel like it's just the people just.
This list is also talking about how Eddie Vedder's impact on the grunge scene, because he was there when it was just taking. Like, he's one of the reasons why it took off.
Well, they're really, if you think about it, they're the second band to take off. Nirvana was obviously the first, but Nevermind, it made him the biggest rock band in the world.
Exactly, yeah.
And then Pearl Jam was right.
So you got to give him
coattails of them.
Without him, that band, they needed something, and he was the guy that brought them together.
But it's almost like we talked about before. He's the only one that's alive of those five, so it's almost like we take him for granted.
Yeah.
Well, because it's almost like.
It's like, you weren't in enough pain to kill yourself or overdose.
This guy's got his shit
You
together.
loser.
What do you have, a good life? I hate you.
You didn't die at 27.
You're not the best. Hey, this guy's a phony.
Yeah.
Look at this guy reaping all the benefits. Prick.
So you guys want to wrap it up, or you got more to say about the era of grunge? Because we talked about a lot, man. We talked about how it started, all the different bands, the drugs and suicides, my balls. We talked about a few things.
So as far as Kurt Cobain, a lot of people have him as number one just because he died at the youngest age, and obviously they were the biggest band to come out of the grunge era, and they were the beginning of the grunge era.
Uh-huh.
As a singer, I'm not that impressed, but as a lyricist, Something in the Way is the song that got me, and it was. Kind of like we were talking about, it's almost he has this mystical.
Yeah, it's like a very fairy.
It's like a folk tale-ish.
Yeah.
And the reason that song is interesting because he grew up in Aberdeen, Washington, which is a blue collar town. Yep. No one really did anything there. It was a little bit outside of Seattle, and there's a bridge. And people say that the reason that he wrote that song, and he wrote it under the bridge where he was living because he was homeless for a little bit. But as a lyricist, I think he's great. I think his vocals aren't that great, but Unplugged.
Oh my God, that was
was amazing.
Did we all
the
say our
Unplugged
favorite
unbelievable
songs?
masterpiece?
I know you said yours.
But
Your favorite grunge song?
yeah. Well, my favorite grunge song is "Smells Like Teen Spirit." But right now, actually, I don't know. I think it's "Black" by Pearl Jam.
You're welcome.
Why don't we go through each of the bands?
That's a great song.
Why don't we go through each of the bands and name our favorite song from those bands?
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay, so
So obviously, your favorite was what? Just overall.
Overall, my favorite song is "Wood" by Alice in Chains. So that's my favorite Alice in Chains song.
Okay.
Me, it's hard to say which one's my favorite.
Hard to say what it is.
I would say Plush just because of the amount of times I had to hear it.
It would be between Plush and Creep, so they're both by Stone Temple Pilot. It just depends on the day. Really. It really just depends on the day.
Stone Temple Pilots is great. I love playing them on fucking Rock Band. Amazing.
I love singing to their music.
Yeah.
I rock out in the car.
Here's the thing. When
like
you
it's
say,
my concert.
with Eddie Vedder, I love his voice when I'm like, well,
it makes me think of Chris making fun of him singing. So that's why I can't.
So there you go.
Seriously.
There you go. There's fun stuff right there. He's so good. I love his voice.
Okay, so let's get to Pearl Jam. What's your favorite song by Pearl Jam, Chris?
Jamie Pearl's.
Black, no doubt.
Black. It's pronounced.
What's yours?
Black, probably.
What's yours, Matt?
Man, I got two.
Oh wait, you know what?
I got two.
There's two.
Last
Kiss.
Well, time out. Well, that's actually covered.
Not yet. It's a cover.
That's one of the best covers ever.
Ever.
And on top
Man
of
Who
that,
Sold the World is
The Man
probably
Who Sold the
best.
World and Where Did You Sleep?
Oh shit, that's a
Comfortably
good
Numb,
one.
Also by Pearl Jam.
Oh shit.
Shocker. Actually, some of their best songs aren't even there. Shocker. Eddie Vedder.
Okay.
Overrated.
Since you put me on the spot
You gotta pick
that
one.
I got to pick one, I'll go Jeremy.
Okay,
Oh,
so all right,
shit.
so hold on.
Jeremy's
So that's Pearl Jam.
The other
Okay.
one that was close contention, but not my favorite, I'll say Jeremy. Better Man would be my second.
All right, hold on. So that's Pearl Jam.
Solid songs.
Nirvana, we already know. Yours just Smells Like Teen Spirit, Brian.
Smells
Matt?
like poop.
Something in the Way would be my favorite.
Mine would be Heart Shaped Box. Okay,
Wow.
so we got that.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's go Alice in Chains. Mine's obviously Wood because it's my favorite of all time in grunge. Brian,
What was Alice in Chains?
Alice in Chains.
Man, they probably have the best catalog of music.
Yeah.
To me,
That's fucked up. I don't know how to pick one.
it's so
you gotta
amazing.
pick one.
I'll pick one.
Rooster?
It's a good one.
I love Rooster.
Rooster's good. No Excuses good.
I love Nutshell, but Wood is a very relatable song for me.
That's a
some of
great
the things
song.
that I've went through. So
It's a really good
I'm picking
song.
all the freaking all of the hits.
so would Man in the Box. That's a good one too.
My favorite would be
Probably Down in a Hole.
Down in a Hole is
Yeah,
my
I
favorite.
figured.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm always down in the hole.
all right, so let's go Stone Temple Pilots, Matt.
That's an easy one.
Plush.
Yeah, I would have to go with
Brian?
Plush.
Creep. Come on, what's up?
Which one?
Creep.
I'm gonna throw you guys for a loop. Sour Girl. Sour Girl's my
Oh,
favorite.
Sour
okay.
Girl's good. Dead and
Alright.
Bloated is another great song.
Okay, all right. What smells
Yeah,
you
but
on that
tripping
one?
on a hole in a paper heart's a really good one too.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
that all the time. I trip on holes in paper hearts.
Shut up, Brian.
Man, but Plush acoustic.
So wait, last one though. This,
Ooh.
so we'll do the top 5 bands. So we'll say Soundgarden. What's your favorite, Matt?
That's easy. Black Hole song.
Yeah, same.
Mine's Pretty News.
Really?
I love that song.
I thought you were gonna say Spoon Man.
No,
Spoon
when I saw that on
Man.
Saturday Night Live, that's what got me.
My
hooked,
second would be Fell on Black Days.
Okay.
Man. Yeah, that's a good one too.
Man, that's an awesome song. Oh my God, he rocks it.
Yeah.
Brian.
All right.
Well,
so
we talked about a lot.
We
in
did.
The grunge
There's another
music
one of those fucking
era.
flies. Yeah, we talked about a lot of stuff. Like the one thing that I'm gonna have to edit out of here is my balls. I don't want you guys to know about my balls.
You definitely got to keep that in there. Dude, your balls like solidified and just with
It's
the
just
epitome
blue balls.
of grunge. No, but it was
You
the
gotta-
epitome of grunge. The pain.
You got a serious case of grunge balls, Brian.
Yeah, grunge balls.
grunge balls when you think you have cancer.
Harry, Henry, and Marcy. The three.
But you know what's funny is like, so the band Nickelback, which is like voted
greatest
as, like,
band of all
no,
time?
they're like voted as like the worst rock band of all time. They were heavily inspired by grunge, and grunge was so mad. They were like, "Oh God, fucking Nickelback just
Hey, listen.
destroyed our legacy."
So not grunge, but
we
didn't even talk about Audio Slave.
Well, that's not. I mean,
it's not the grunge.
that's a
era,
super
though.
band,
It's
though. It's like
Well, there's
you
a
know,
lot of great bands out
yeah.
of that era.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. There's a lot of bands that were technically could be considered grunge, but that are technically post grunge,
Yeah.
like Candlebox. That was a '90s band that was technically quote unquote post grunge, and they have a great catalog of songs. I would suggest that you look them up.
Or else.
Or else Collective Soul. That was another one that was on that precipice of grunge, but
December?
they're post grunge.
Isn't that one of their songs? December.
I think it was November. I'll be gone till November. I'll be gone. Oh wait, that's not grunge. Well, that's. I mean, I'm all done. You guys, if there's anything else you want to say, tell the people that you love them. Tell
My
them.
man, Passing Pains.
This is the only thing I do have to say. If you
Deuces.
like what you've heard, you make sure you like this video and subscribe to the damn channel already.
Yeah, like, share, definitely.
What are you waiting for?
Like,
gonna be
share,
awesome.
subscribe.
It's gonna be awesome stuff like this coming out every week.
LSS.
Also got to plug
Docs.
Hard Pear Apple Hard Cider.
Mm-hmm. And we
Great
gotta
American Cider.
give our shout out to Real Green Touring. Justine and Mikkel are actually in Jamaica right now.
Jamaica, man.
They're doing the ganja, and they're
Yeah,
also,
man, we be jamming, man.
there's so they're getting everything, pretty much doing the last touch ups for their business, and then they're gonna go live in January. So, so they're out there right now getting everything done. I just want to give them a shout out, Real Green Touring, and then
Only those who will risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. T.S. Eliot.
Docs.
that's for Docs. And also
do the
Isabella,
right thing.
I want to go Isabella Seda. She's a photographer.
Yes.
And I'm going to put a link in the description below to her website. She's really, really awesome. She's very supportive of the channel, and I want to make sure that we help her out as much as possible, as much as she's been helping me out. And also, I'm going to put a link in the description below for the Real Green Touring. and for our Facebook page and our website.
And our website, yeah.
I want you guys to be able to check us out. Check out that website. We got videos we'll be posting on there every single week. And I'm going to continue, obviously, doing these podcasts on Tuesdays. We will be recording them, and they will go out to the public on Wednesdays. This has been the Free Bridge Podcast. That was the Felicos. What's up?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just got a notification 8 years ago. At this point, my wife, well, she wasn't my wife at the time, she posted a status that says, is getting married tomorrow. It's July 17th, my anniversary.
Oh, snap.
Tomorrow.
Anniversary.
And it just popped up on my Facebook.
He didn't remember that shit, so he's in the doghouse now after this podcast.
Actually, I caught it in time. Tomorrow's my anniversary.
That is true.
Oh.
So at this point, 8 years ago, I was like, oh my God.
Am I making the
I might
right
have
decision?
a ball and chain tomorrow.
Yeah. So
you
that
shouldn't have a case of the old blue ball.
Yeah, no.
Balls.
So if anybody can get the moral of the story to this entire podcast is women, take care of your husbands.
Don't
you
do
never
heroin.
know. And don't do heroin. You never know when their balls are going to fall off.
In the words of John Mayer, fathers, be good to your daughters.
So-
Mothers, be good to your daughters too.
Let him serenade you. All right, so this has been talking stuff with the Felicos. This has been the Free Bridge Podcast. I'm your host, Brian, and we'll see you next week, guys. Take care.
Deuces.